Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 7.14 patch notes. So this is probably going to be a bit of a longer video, so just make sure, as always, to check out the description to find the timestamps. You can also find access to this Google Doc and then just skim through it to see the most interesting parts that you want to look at. So I always explain this to people that this is intended to be like almost like an audio book or a buffet where you can just go through, find the chapters that are most interesting to you, and just watch those. So of course, I wish everyone would watch the entire thing, but at the same time, I know that not everyone's going to have time to watch the whole thing, and that's fine. The video is designed to be that way, so just, you know, find what you find to be most interesting, and just go watch it. All right, so first off, we're going to go into the patch notes themselves. Then we're going to go into what I think is going to change in the meta, my metagame predictions. Then finally, we're going to go down and look at the support tier list itself and talk about a bunch of different picks down there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so Kayn. I'm not sure about Kayn. There's a lot of text on him if we pull him up here on the League Wikia. I think he's definitely going to be someone that people are going to play. But you can only change forms when you go to the fountain, so you can't change like in combat or in battle. So he doesn't really have... It doesn't seem like he has as much utility as some of the other Transformers like Gnar or Nidalee or Elise, because he can't do it like on command in combat. You have to gain stuff in order to unlock his different forms. Then you have to change in the fountain, and it's not clear that one form is dramatically superior to another form, right? So it's not like once he gets his upgraded form, he gets to go back to the fountain and come back out and he's got like a 1 minute power play or something like that. It seems like they are relatively balanced, and that I mean, they are useful for different purposes, but I don't know, it's an interesting concept, but I wish they would have allowed it somewhere like in combat actively, so you don't have to go back to the summoning platform to do it. Then that would have like more utility, right? So then you could go and assassinate people and then switch over and like turn into kind of like a life healing off tank kind of thing. But as it stands, it seems to me on first glance, once again, I haven't played him a lot, I haven't watched him, I haven't played him at all, and I haven't watched him on the PvE that much. But it seems to me like it's a little bit clunky, and that's going to hurt his utility, which ultimately, if you have a transformer like that, like the reason that a transformation would be cool is because it would give you additional abilities and additional utility. But it's not sure if that happens here. So you can respond to different game states by switching forms, but you have to go back to the fountain, and to me that just feels a little clunkier than a lot of the other transformers. Okay, so he gets bonus magic damage. It is post-mitigation, though. It's important to note that a lot of this stuff is post-mitigation, which means it's not going to be nearly as strong as a lot of the pre-mitigation stuff out there. So what that means is, like, let's say you do 100 damage, and then 50% of it's going to be blocked by the enemy's armor. You're only going to get the extra magic damage based on that 50 damage, not based on your original 100 damage. So this is after armor, after magic resist. That's when this applies. So, I mean, this seems okay. You get extra healing, which once again would be good for an off-tank, kind of like an Aatrox type of thing. I think thematically he's similar to Aatrox. I think they're both from wherever. I'm not totally up on the lore, but I think that they're from the same like region or universe or whatever. Okay, so he's like a healing off-tank when he turns to Ras, and he's an assassin that gets a little bit of extra damage. When he's in that form. Okay, so this one dashes forward, deals some physical damage. Now he can't, it looks like he can hit multiple targets. It doesn't say his dash range. Okay, so when he dashes through, then he kind of looks like he explodes out, and that's what does some extra damage there. So, you know, you're looking at a potential 270 with a 130% AD bonus. That's pretty high. When he does this, it's only 50% total AD instead of 65% bonus, and does maximum health damage. So this would be like your tank breaking mode that heals. So he's like an off-tank tank breaker and an assassin. It's kind of the theme of a lot of his abilities. Pretty cheap mana cost. This is something that you could spam pretty fast, so he's going to be pretty mobile. I don't know the dash range. I'd have to go and look at the animations to see. This is okay. After a short delay in which you can't perform any actions, I don't know what that delay is. I wish they would just tell me. Performs an upward sweep with a scythe, damaging all enemies in a line. Once again, I don't know the range on the line either. And it decays. So the ranges on this are going to really determine how viable this is and how long you get locked out. Generally, like something that locks you out, an animation that doesn't allow you to do stuff that can't be canceled, is usually pretty rough when you self-stun yourself to do things. Okay, so this is good because he conjures a living shadow at the casting position to perform in his set. Okay, so it allows him to do other stuff so he doesn't get locked out, which is nice. Knocks up for 1 second. Okay, so he does get locked out, but he knocks somebody up for 1 second. Range is increased by 200, which is nice, but once again, we don't know what the initial range is here from the League Wikia. Okay, deals extra damage. So, ratios are pretty nice. Looks like he does some pretty decent damage here. Shadow Step, 40% bonus movement speed and ghosted for 1.5 seconds. Heals himself when he moves through terrain. That's a pretty large heal, and it's 40% of your bonus AD. So if you have 200, bonus AD, that'd be a pretty large heal. Increased to 5 seconds. Okay, so he can run for 5 seconds. He gets ghosted for 5 seconds at 40% movement speed. That's pretty crazy for closing the gap and rotating. Casting this, remove slow, additionally. Okay, remove slow, enters the terrain at least once. We improved for 70%. Wow. So he gets a 70% movement speed buff for 5 seconds if he's not in combat when he's in Shadow Assassin. And he's immune to slows? Yeah, it seems pretty ridiculous. Umbral Trespass. Okay, don't know the range on it. Apply Umbral Trespass for a few seconds. 2.5 seconds, revealing them. Okay, so he basically becomes untargetable. Physical damage. Okay, pretty good physical damage. So he basically gets like a free Zonias if he's near people. And he gets to burst out and do damage. Okay, it resets. What's the Darkened Scythe cooldown? Okay, so he can transform when he goes back to Fountain. Is that all he gets? Okay. Or can he transform? I think he still has to do it in the Fountain. I'd have to see it in action. Umbral Trespass range damage is modified to deal maximum health physical damage. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I think he's going to be strong. This seems like ridiculous for rotating, like getting to people assassin-wise. And he's got pretty good ratios, pretty nice burst combo. It looks like you could go in with Reaping Slash, do that damage, do your little Blades Reach combo. This is on a pretty low cooldown too, so you can kind of jump around the fight. Go into Umbral Trespass, pop back out. This would be off cooldown again. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to see him in action. There's a lot of text on this. It looks like there's going to be a decent amount of finesse to his play. But yeah, I think he's going to be strong upon reading this stuff. I mean, this just seems like this is ridiculous in the jungle. It looks like these are both area of effect abilities, which would be great for clearing like raptors and stuff early on. So I think he's primarily going to be a jungler, and I think, yeah, he's kind of like in a Kha'Zix type of vein. I think he's going to do a ton of damage. I think people would primarily use Assassin mode I mean, maybe you could use Rost while you're just going for a jungle clear or something to stay healthy. Oh, it's against enemy champions, though, not against monsters. Okay. I don't know. I'll have to see it in action. Early judgment, I think he's going to be good. I think he'll be good. So I had thought, no, not better than Kha'Zix, but on reading those numbers a little bit more, I think probably we'll go with strong. Okay. So I wasn't sure about Kha'Zix because he doesn't have the resets or like, but he does have a lot of mobility. I assume that his Q can jump over a wall also, even if his E is on cooldown. I think dashes forward. Yeah, it doesn't say he has to target an enemy or anything. Yeah, so I think he can probably still dash over walls with this, and then he can run through walls with this. So he has 2 mobility to like get away in the jungle. 2 mobility moves with a lot of damage. I think people are primarily going to use the assassin mode and just run around ganking people. He doesn't have a lot of crowd control. Oh, actually, he does. I mean, he does have a slow here, 60% over 1.5 seconds off of Blade's Reach. And it's not going to lock him out because he uses the Living Shadow. Or he could do a knock-up with that. Okay, so he has some, is a slow on his W, potential knock-up, and this doesn't CC them, you just infest them for a little bit. So he doesn't have a lot of crowd control, but he has 2 gap closers. He's got this, which is crazy. If he enters terrain at least once, will be improved for 70%. Yeah, so he can just basically come rolling up, like, running 70% extra speed from basically anywhere. It's going to be so hard to ward for him. Yeah, I think he's going to be, top of the line. Maybe not completely top of the tier list, but I think he'll be up there. I think he'll be good. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. All right, so we got Alistar. I don't think this is going to be that consequential. He gets a little bit of extra mitigation. It's still not nearly... He used to get 70 at level 1. At all levels, he would get 70. So this is not enough. Like, the problem with Alistar is you have to use both of his... He has really great CC. He has 3 different CC abilities. But the problem is, in a lot of fights, you have to use both your W and your Q in order to engage. Which mean... And they're on pretty long cooldowns. You know, they're on, like... Even if you level them up all the way, I think the lowest you can get them is like a... somewhere between 10 to 12 seconds cooldown, pre-cooldown reduction. So, and if he doesn't have those cooldowns, he just kind of walks around and doesn't do anything. Like his E, here, we'll just pull him up here. His E with the stun is nice. I think they lowered the cooldown on his E a few patches ago, but I'm not sure that it's going to be enough. Let me see. It's been a while it's been probably since last November since I played him consistently. He was really good before they nerfed his Q like hardcore. It used to be 1.5 seconds. They nerfed it to 1 second, which is a really big deal. Okay, so I think they did lower the cooldown. So yeah, it's 10 seconds on these 2 and then this one. So you have a lot of downtime is what that means. He doesn't have an escape gear, which is a problem with a lot of engaged champions, is they don't have a way to get out. And his defensive steroids are really weak, except for his ultimate. So if his ultimate's down, that's a problem. But I mean, you could still run in with Zeke's, engage, and then you'd have to pop your ult almost immediately, but you don't have a way to hold them still. I mean, I guess if you knock them up and then get the stun on them, then you'll hold them still for the Zeke's. It's okay. It's just he has to use 2 of his abilities. The thing is, like, Rakan can do this combo, basically. It's not going to deal as much damage, but, you know, he can knock somebody up for a second also with just his W. And there's a little bit more time for counterplay with Rakan, but he still has other abilities. I don't know. Alistar, he's okay. He's okay. I just feel like there are probably better engaged tanks right now. than Alistar. But, you know, if you slap a Zeke's on him, like a Talisman, Zeke's, Knight's Vow, he'll probably still be pretty competitive. So, he's alright. I think he gets outclassed by other tanks right now that have a bit more utility to him. Mostly Rakan. Okay. Caitlyn, this is going to be a pretty big nerf. I'm not sure if it's going to completely run her out of the meta. I doubt it. Like, her thing right now is not her, like, attack speed, like, heavy damage, just consistent damage output at the end of the game. That she does have that, and that's okay. But, like, the thing really with her is her zone control with traps. And they seem very committed to letting her keep that. We're continuing to trim strengths aside from smart trap placement and headshots. So that's the identity they want for her, and that's really what makes her most overpowered is the traps. Like, if you've never noticed this on the Yordle, I've talked about this in past videos with the snap traps. And a lot of people don't know this, but it deals extra damage. It's not just a trap. It is a burst of damage, essentially, when you stand on that trap. And it lets you combo people out with her headshot. So, Yordle snap trap, you can get up to 5 traps, and they're only on a 10-second cooldown. And they charge up, so you can hold a lot of them at once. You can drop them up to 800 units away. And your headshot damage increases by 190 plus 170% AD. Okay, so let's just run through a number here for you real quick. Let's say that you get your Infinity Edge around level 9. Alright, it might be lower than that. Let's say level 13. This is more realistic. Level 13, you've got your Infinity Edge and, like, another crit item that doesn't have AD on it, right? So you've got your Infinity Edge and your Rapid Fire Cannon, or your Infinity Edge and your Static Shiv, or whatever. This is when you're going to max out your Yordle Snap Trap. So you'll max your Q first, and then your Yordle Snap Trap. So let's say you've got your Infinity Edge, and you're scaling. So your natural AD is going to be about 78 at this time. Infinity Edge is going to be 80. So it puts you at 158. And then let's say you have, just from runes, masteries, just other random stuff, let's just say that you have 175 AD at level 13. That's a pretty conservative estimate, I think. That's assuming that you're just going, like, Infinity Edge and then all of the attack speed items. Okay, so we've got 175. Let's say you step on one of these level 5 traps here, right? So you have 190. You write this down. So we've got 190 and then 75% or 70% times 0.7. So that's total AD, not bonus AD. It's important to remember that. Okay, so we've got 122 plus 190. All right, 313. All right, so let's just write this down. Got 313. You've got your normal headshot, which is bonus fit 50% plus 0.5 times total critical strike modifier, critical strike chance. So your critical strike chance, let's say it's like 50% by now. I don't want to do all that math right now. Let's just say, I think it's, what, 0.5 times total critical strike modifier times total critical strike chance percentage. 50, 55. I don't, how's that even, base value is 2. It's going to be 2.5. Okay. So it's 0.5 times 2.5 times your crit percentage. Okay, so we've got 2.5 because you have Infinity Edge times 0.5 times critical strike chance. Oh, I see. Times, what would it be, 20, 50, what do we say, 50? Okay, so 62. Okay, that makes more sense. Gotcha. Okay, and then plus 50. That's going to be about 113%. of your AD. So you're going to get 113%. What was the base damage was... Let me see. 112. So you're... So 112%. I think, oh, it was 175. That's right. Okay, so we've got... Okay, so it's 196 extra. Okay, so that's how much extra damage your headshot is going to deal with the Yordle Snap Trap. So the headshot, so a normal headshot under those circumstances, if they don't get hit with a Yordle Snap Trap, a normal headshot is 196. A Yordle Snap Trap headshot is 313 plus the 196. Is 509 damage, okay? So you have 509 bonus damage on your auto attack. So that's how important the Snap Trap is. It does a ton of damage. Now remember, all of this can crit also. That's really, really important because something like a Varus Arrow or, I don't know, there's just all sorts of like attack damage abilities like a Jin Grenade or a Jin W. All of these things can't crit. This can crit. All right, and so all of a sudden we have 509 modified damage, and then the normal damage was 175. So we've got 509 plus 175, 684. That's 684. Now if that crits with an Infinity Edge times 2.5. 1710. So she can still deal 1710 headshot damage. That's assuming very low numbers. That's just 175 AD. See, app. Okay, so, and that's not including a rapid fire proc, a static shiv proc, or anything like that. That's just straight up, someone steps on a snap trap. Now, keep in mind, this is on the Yordle snap trap. So if you do a full combo on Caitlyn, let's say that someone steps on that snap trap, and you do a full combo, so that means they step on it, you headshot them, net backwards, so you hit them with a net, which is going to be like a really low level at this point, like level 1, so just a 70 damage on the net. That also marks them again for another headshot, which is a standard headshot. And let's say that crits again. So that means that'd be 70 plus your Q damage. Your Q is going to be maxed out. That's going to be 170% of your AD, which is 175. That's 296 plus 190, whatever. Okay, so 488 damage. And they always take full damage, revealed. So they're going to take full damage even if you hit it through minions. I'd never read that line of text before. So if they got hit by a Yordle snap trap, they're always going to take full damage. If you headshot, net, Q, headshot. So your Q is going to do 487 here. You're going to get one more of these 196 headshots that can crit. So we've got... You add all this up. $27.57 damage. $27.57 damage. That's not even including if she ults afterward. Like, if you ult on top of that, you know, it's going to be an additional, what, 475? 200% AD, so 175 times 2 plus 475. 825. So you can add on, if you manage to hit them with an ultimate also, that's 3,000, it's like over 3,500 damage. Now, yeah, some of this is going to get like mitigated by armor, but this is why it can feel like Caitlyn just literally one-shots you at the end of the game, because she does. If you step on one of those traps and she just auto attack, net, Q, auto attack. Very standard combo that a well-practiced Caitlyn can pull off. It's going to do this much damage. That's with just 175 total AD. Right, so that's just like an Infinity Edge with runes and masteries. That's not even including if they get like, you know, a Bloodthirster or just some other like AD item. It'll just go through the roof. Now, that is assuming a double headshot there. Whatever, if you don't want to assume a double headshot, then just take off, you know, a little bit of damage on one of these, and that it's an abundance of damage. That's the point. It is a zillion damage. So yeah, she is going to lose at level 10. She's going to lose 20% attack speed, which does matter. That's about a little bit more than a dagger. It's about 500 gold worth of attack speed. That's about equal to 1.5 kills. So it's definitely going to hurt her. But it's not. It doesn't fix the headshot. Like, this is just an obscene amount of damage. I mean, this is like burst damage from a mage mid lane whenever anyone steps on these snap traps, and she can just line them up. Like, you're trying to siege a tower, cool, just line up 5 traps there. The enemy cannot engage through that unless it's under very weird circumstances, unless they go through those traps. And if they go on the trap, they're taking a ton of damage. Even a tank is going to feel that damage. So I think that's she still is going to be a top tier pick. Like, she may not be number 1 anymore. She might still be number 1. I don't know. But I think she's definitely a top 5 AD carry. So I just wanted to do some math there just to explain it. If you ever wondered, why is Caitlyn so valued? And I never see Caitlyn, like, be that effective in my games. It's probably because she's not leveling up her traps and she's not comboing correctly. But if it's a Caitlyn that combos correctly and levels those traps, you're going to feel it. Even with just, this is just, remember, 2 items. 2 items. This isn't like a 6-item Caitlyn build. This is 2 items. It's Infinity Edge plus like Rapid Fire Cannon. It's not including the Rapid Fire damage either. Or if you get Static Shiv, it's not including the Static Shiv damage. But it is assuming that with the 50% to crit that you hit on both of these, which is, there's only a 25% chance that's going to happen. But either way, all right, there's some fuzzy napkin math here. But the moral of the story is Caitlyn still hurts really badly because of her traps. She's a burst caster, basically, that just happens to auto attack also. So I don't think that this is really going to affect her Energizer build, which is crazy. Because, yeah, just imagine when you get all of that and you hit with a Static Shiv that also crits and hits everyone, or a Rapid Fire Cannon where she can fire this stuff from like 800 range and also do extra damage with the Rapid Fire. It gets really nasty really quickly. So I think she'll still be a really powerful pick in the meta. All right, Cho. I think this is going to make Cho viable in the jungle. Now, I'm not sure about top lane. He's still really clunky top lane and mid lane. But I think it's definitely a major improvement. You might even be able to see him at the support role. So, the big things they changed his Q, so it's only 60 mana now instead of 90. This is massive. That means he can go fishing for this a lot more and not run out of mana. So you can just try to hit people with Qs if you miss them. Whatever, you can just line it up and just keep trying if you want. So I think that's a big change. Feral Scream silencing for a little bit longer at lower levels is also nice. It's not a huge deal. It's just like an extra 1/10 of a second, but it is nice. And then Vorpal Spikes. So now you definitely want to level your Q. Before it was like, well, you would probably max your W because it's much more consistent damage. But now that this is so cheap, I think if we look at Cho's thing, I think his W is still on the expensive side. That's always been kind of, yeah, it's 110 mana, which is so much. This does way more damage too, but it's only 60. So I think you can really just start fishing with this. It also has a much longer range. I mean, 950 is pretty big. So yeah, I think you will level your Q because it's way more damage and it's way cheaper. You can spam it a lot more, whereas your W is, the silence is nice. But it's just way, way, way more expensive. I don't know. This is more consistent, but this is like more payoff if you hit it. So it just depends. This is probably... No, this isn't worth a max. This would probably be the last thing that you max. But it was because the percentage damage is the same at all ranks, and you just get a little bit of extra. I mean, it's good, but... And a little bit more slow. But this would be the last thing that you max, I think. But yeah, I think it's big. So it's the buff to Q is huge. That might make him viable as a support because now you can actually try to hit the 80 carries, especially if people are going to play these immobile 80 carries like Draven, Twitch, Misfortune. You know, all of these I think are going to be really popular right now, and they don't have a really good dash escape. So if you can just consistently land those Qs, I think that'll be some big game in lane. The E change is also another thing that's really massive. So now, like, one of the problems with Cho is he just didn't, like, he had burst damage, but he didn't have a lot of consistent damage over time, and his kit was somewhat unreliable because people could just walk out of your Q and your Feral Scream doesn't slow them, so they can just kind of walk away from you and kite you. Well, Vorpal Spikes helps with that a little bit now because it applies a slow to your auto attacks that are area of effect, so it can slow a whole bunch of people at the same time. And, it allows you to stick to people, right? So now you can, you know, if you hit them with a Rupture, you're going to stick to them for quite a while, especially once this gets leveled up. It's basically going to be a perma-slow. I mean, it's going to be attack, walk, walk, attack, walk, walk, attack. And they're going to be slowed for, you know, it lasts for a second and a half. If you hit them with 2 attacks, it's probably going to slow them at least for like 2.5 seconds. If you hit them with the third one, you know, probably closer to 3.5 to 4 seconds. It only has a 4-second cooldown. So once you level it up all the way. So I just don't think people are going to be able to get away. It's just going to be constant sticking power to people. And obviously, when you're hitting them with these spikes and they're slow, that makes it much easier to hit your Q as well. So in theory, you could talisman up to people if you wanted to, and then just start auto-attacking them with Vorpal Spikes, and then hit them with the Rupture full combo, just to ensure that you hit this. It's kind of the same concept as with Thresh, going up and flaying somebody first before you hit them with the hook. Because if you hit them with the flay, you're probably going to hit them with the hook because they're so slowed, unless they flash or dash. I think it'll be similar with Cho, because it's a pretty big slow. Like, it's hard to miss your Q when you put it right on top of them and they're slowed for 30% at least. So I think that could be a thing, especially for support Cho, where, you know, you could run in with your talisman and just start auto-attacking them and then full combo them with Rupture, Scream, Chomp. So yeah, I think that, and that'll be, you know, for ganks, I don't really know. He might still have to just hit his Q on ganks if he's in the jungle. But either way, I think people will try him out. I think he will be relevant. The Feast is really good true damage, and it makes you very tanky. So one of the key components here is that you get a bunch of bonus health, right? So you get a ton of extra health. He already has really big tank stats for the most part. He starts with 29 armor. He gets the full magic resist per level. He moves at 345. So he's already moving pretty well. and he's going to get a ton of extra health. So what that means is you can afford to get more utility items. So you could get a ZZ Rot definitely with him early. It's got an 80-second cooldown. So you can just walk up. Like I said, you hit a Q, full combo him, just chomp him. You don't have to execute and kill him. You can if you want to. Your AD carry might get a little mad at you if you do that. That will give you another stack. But you don't have to execute him with it. You don't get any extra execution damage. So nothing says you can't just, like, chomp him at the start of a fight. Just to, you know, knock him to half health and then just let your AD carry get the kill on him. Getting the extra stacks is nice, but putting the gold on your AD carry is probably better. So yeah, I think that's really good. You get 1,000 damage when you're chomping dragons or barons. So that means that especially if you're the jungler, no one's going to outsmite you except for maybe Nunu. You beat Nunu by a little bit. I think Nunu's top end consume is 960 true damage, I believe. So you barely beat Nunu also. But either way, it's similar to Nunu where you can just go in and just steal buffs from them. You can go in and steal dragons, barons. It's just a nice little safety net if you're a jungler. But not only can you get Zeeks, you could also get Ardent Censer in theory here. If you run Stoneborn Pact. So I've talked about this with other Ardent tanks in past patches, but anything that applies a consistent slow, you can run Ardent Censer if they have good AP ratios, and lo and behold, he has great AP ratios. He has 100% on his Q, he has 70% on his W. Vorpal Spikes is 30% per hit, so if you hit him with all three, that's 90. So he has pretty good ratios, and because you already get naturally pretty tanky from the extra health, then you might, depending on the game state, be able to go for Ardent Censer. And then, you know, obviously the full combo, if you just Rupture, spike them, you're going to mark everybody, and then they just Ardent Censer, Zeeks, and just go to town and blow people up. Now, he doesn't have as much peel as other tanks bot lane, and he's a little bit less reliable because they can dodge Rupture. But you know, he still has quite a bit of CC if you hit it, right? So this is a really good knock-up. Slow, does max damage health, screams, silences people, and that's really, really annoying in a team fight to get silenced for that long. So he's kind of like a burst mage that has some pretty good CC in utility, and he has a pretty good itemization path. So I don't think he'll be like a top tier, like the very top support, but I think that there's a chance he could be competitive in some comps. And as far as other lanes, I would probably see him in the jungle. If we see him at all. Like, he might still be okay top lane, because he does have the percentage-based damage, which is great for breaking tanks. We might see him top lane, either top, jungle, or support. Which, I mean, that covers basically all your bases, but I expect to see him some. I'm not sure just how good he'll be, but as a support build, I think probably you'd go, I have the Equinox, Moby, Zeeks, Knights, Locket, or you could go Ardent Censer if you wanted to. You could try the Talisman build as well if you think you're not going to be as tanky, but remember that you kind of get a double bonus on the healing, because whenever you kill something, you get a little bit of extra health from it. And you're not going to be able to kill minions in lane that much. But if you have the Relic Shield line, then you will get to kill some to get those procs, and that'll just heal you a little bit extra in lane. So I think that Relic Shield kind of makes sense on him. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Diana, I don't think it's going to matter. She's just a very confused champion. Like, she wants to be like a burst all-in assassin, but at the same time, she just doesn't do enough burst unless she's hyper-fed to do that. You have to sit there and auto-attack a few times to really get your, like, heavy burst in. Which maybe, like, against this, like, tanks or just champions that can't really dash away, you can get those auto-attacks in more. Okay, so it restores mana. You get 20% attack speed for her next few attacks. The cooldown is lower on her Q. That is significant. Cascade mana cost is lower with her W. So you get up to 90% attack speed instead of 20. It is relevant. I don't know. I mean, obviously it's buffs. Obviously it's good. I just feel like what when, like, my question is, when would you pick her over the other top tier assassins? So, like, when would you pick Diana over Kassadin, or over LeBlanc, or Katarina, or Echo, or Fizz? Like, I just don't understand situations, like, tactically, where I would want Diana over those other champions, because she doesn't have escapes. This has always been her problem. Like, she's really good at going in and dashing onto somebody, but then what happens if the jungler shows up when you do that? Or, you know, someone else, like, rolls out of a bush or something when you do that. It just, or, like, you just get straight up ganked. Like, how do you escape a gank if you're pushed up in your lane and, you know, the Kayn comes rolling up through this random wall that you didn't have warded? Like, how do you get away from that? And the answer is you don't. Like, you just die. And I really don't like champions that are like that, where they don't have escapes. She doesn't have a lot of utility. Her only, like, utility is her stun, or her, like, little pull in or whatever, little mini stun. So she does damage. I just think that there are other champions that do damage and also have more utility, or mobility. So I don't know. She's okay. If people like playing Diana, you know, this is definitely good news for you, but I would just still highly recommend trying out the other assassins. She just, I guess they're trying to make her like a battle mage where she stays in combat and auto attacks a lot, and maybe that's a really good, like, with Nashor's Tooth and stuff like that, kind of like a Kali. But I just feel like there typically are better choices than her in most compositions, who have more powerful resets and just other stuff, other mobility, other ranges. Okay, this Fiora is probably a big deal. I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. She's already not that oppressive in solo queue. Like, she's powerful, but I don't feel like she's super out of line. Like, she does a lot of damage and she scales really well, but there are a bunch of top laners that fit that bill. And the fact that Lethality is getting stronger this patch and she's not a Lethality user, I think is also going to hurt her. So the bonus movement speed is lowered, and she doesn't get the speed just by turning on Duelist Dance. So she actually has to go up and start proccing vitals to get it, which I think is a pretty big deal. I don't know if it's going to completely put her in the gutter, but I think it certainly hurts her. It lets people escape her and play around her vitals a lot more. So I don't know. So what, like, Fiora's primary, like, job is beating up tanks top lane, because she's got that true damage. She is good at fighting other fighters, you know, like Riven or Camille and things like that. But I feel like she already has a pretty bad matchup against Kled and Gnar. I don't know, maybe not Kled. I'm not sure. But I feel like this is going to definitely hurt her competitively in the top lane, because she's just not going to be able to do what she wants to do as much as she used to be able to do it. So I think that's going to hurt. If people don't play her, then I think other, like, mega tanks might start coming back a little bit. So you've got your Shin, your Galio, Gragas, Gnar, Renekton, because that new Thornmail is going to be so good against a lot of champions in general, that I think you might see the return of big tanks top lane. Not that they've ever really left in competitive play. They're still, like, people are still picking Galio, Shen, Gragas top. But I think the fact that she might fall out of the meta a little bit after that is going to open up a space for tanks to come back in more. People might start going Lethality, Riven, top lane. I think Camille, Jax, and Irelia get a little bit stronger as well off of this. So I think it'll shake up the ecosystem top. We'll talk about my picks for top lane, like what I think will be the best. That's the hardest lane to predict right now, because I think tanks got some new toys. Fiora got nerfed, which also helps out tanks. Lethality people also got some new toys, though. And so it's tough to say which, because tanks historically are pretty good against Lethality. Once they get a couple of items, because Lethality is like flat armor penetration, and tanks just get so much armor that it doesn't matter. However, I don't know. We'll talk about it here in a minute. I'll go through sort of my thought process on what I think is going to be good top lane. Okay, Garen, decent buff. I don't think he's irrelevant. This is a lot of text. But, like, what I get out of this is he heals more outside of combat, and that's kind of the big thing. he does have sort of if you have a really good reaction time, you could prevent a ton of damage with him. So like for the first 0.75 seconds, he takes 60% damage reduction. So this is nice because it does add a little bit of finesse, a little bit of way to distinguish like good Garens from average Garens, which is a problem with Garen overall, is he's such an easy like noob-ish style of champion to play. I guess beginner-friendly champion would be a better way to say that. Way to play that there's just not a lot of ways to stand out and shine as a Garen player to really take him to the next level. He's just always kind of, in other words, the floor and the ceiling are basically at the same place. Like an average Garen right now is about as good as a good Garen, you know? Like there's not really a way to distinguish good Garen play right now. Other than just like don't get caught by ganks and just be more careful when you split push and stuff like that. Like there's no outplay with Garen is what I'm trying to say. But this adds a little bit more outplay because now you can block a ton of damage. So this would not block like a Darius ult. But like if Nar's about to slam you into a wall, or you have to face tank a Jinx rocket for somebody, or just like Zed or something, just like put his mark on you, you can proc this to prevent a bunch of that damage. So I like it that it's kind of a quick reaction time ability that can prevent a lot of damage for a little bit. So I think that that's pretty cool. Spin to win's doing a little bit more damage. I'm trying to think if any of the... I don't think the lethality stuff helps him. I mean, maybe you could go like Ghostblade Garen and just like roam around and try to kill people. I mean, lethality's obviously very good on him because of the way, like his spin to win. Black Cleaver is the core item on him. Just trying to think of how you could leverage like the extra healing. I mean, like, I think maybe just roam, right? So if you push in top lane, if you get kind of injured, you take some harass while you're pushing it, and then you start roaming mid lane, then you're going to be, like, healed up by the time you get to mid lane. So maybe that's what he is he's just kind of a roamer. I don't know. I don't see him being top tier, but this certainly does help him out a little bit. Provides his opponents with a healthy amount of counterplay. Not that much skill expression of his own. Okay, so Riot's basically saying the same thing that I'm saying. Yeah, exactly what I said. I swear I didn't read this before I just made that comment. I don't usually read this flavor text. I just like start commenting on it. But basically, yeah, I mean that's the same thing that I just said. Okay, so we're in accord. This seems like a pretty big nerf. Because right now he can use that brush to check and see if people are in brush. I don't do that enough when I play Ivern. I need to do that a lot more. Just to check brush with my brush. But now... Okay. I mean, that's fair enough. 1600 is pretty ridiculous range to cast the bush to face check. But then again, Ivern doesn't need more nerfs. Like, he's already has major problems, especially in the early game. Like, I love playing him, but he's got some problems. For sure, these days. Anyways, they just added this in, too, I think. This wasn't here originally. It was down here in, like, the, whatever, bug fixes or something. And then I think people were crying in the comments saying, put it up top, it's actually a nerf. And so they actually added it in today. Because I wrote the notes yesterday, and I'm just shooting the video today, because I didn't have time to do the whole video yesterday. Okay, Rammus. I think this is a big meta-defining change. I think that Rammus is going to be huge on this patch. Rammus is already pretty good in solo queue with these changes, but... let's just take a gander at old Rammus again here. So, he deals extra damage based on his armor as bonus magic damage, so that's decent. And it gets increased by a good little chunk whenever he has defensive ball curl on. Okay, so he gets some extra damage on his autos. Whatever. It's okay. Now, Powerball is a big deal. It is really hard to get away from Rammus once he gets some cooldown reduction with Powerball. Because it goes down to 6 seconds now. Like, you can roll up, you know, stun somebody or whatever, slow them, knock them, slow them, It does pretty good damage too, 240 damage. They get slowed by 80% for 1 second, which is, you know, not a long time, but it's a slow and a knockup. And that's really good. In a team fight, he can just constantly like reposition himself quite a lot. He can run people down because you're not escaping from Rammus. If a fight's broken and your team's losing it, everyone's going to die. Rammus is going to run him down. Bonus armor. Now it's your total armor, not your bonus. Okay, it's called bonus armor, but it's not based on your bonus armor. It's based on your total armor. So if you have 200 total armor, you know, this extra 70% is going to give you 140 plus 20, 160 bonus armor. So you're practically unkillable whenever you have defensive ball curl on. It's really, really hard to kill Rammus. Bonus armor and magic resistance, and you get the spike shells damage. And it applies to enemies whenever they hit him. So not only does he get double damage, or like extra damage on his auto attacks, but anytime anyone hits him, they take that damage back in return, which adds up. I mean, if you have 200, that's what, 30? He's level 9, 54 damage returned. So it's not bad. Instantly. And now he can move at 30%. So before it was 60%. So this is the huge buff on this patch. The self-slow is cut in half. So at 60%, he really can't catch anybody. It's so easy to kite him. At 30%, he can still catch people that are slowed, particularly people that are slowed in his ultimate, which we'll talk about here in a second. But now he can actually still kind of catch people. He's going to be on the slow side, but he can actually do something when he has his defensive ball curl on. So, and it's basically always up. Right, so it lasts for 6 seconds as a 6-second cooldown. You can cancel it, cast it again if you want. So basically, it's got almost 100% uptime for this ability. So he just straight up is unkillable most of the time. He has huge mobility. It's so hard to ward for Rammus because he just comes rolling up, going like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And like, even if you have it warded, if he just comes like running through the tri-bush, going like, you know, 600 move speed, you're just not going to catch him. Or you're not going to be able to get away a lot of the times, depending on your support. Janna can knock him out of his ball with her tornado, but he can dodge it too. He's going so fast, he can just like run around the tornado like a good Rammus can. So, very tough to deal with. Now, the taunt is still really good. I mean, it's a 2.25 second taunt. Now, a 12-second cooldown is quite a lot, but it still is pretty solid. And he gets bonus attack speed, which is okay. It's whatever. Now, his ultimate is one of the key things that I think makes him particularly good. He creates an earthquake around himself. He slows enemies and deals magic damage. So this is a stacking slow that stacks up to 8 times. This is why I'm saying the 30% is going to allow him to stay within range of this, because it's only 300 range. So it's just a little bit more than melee. But even at level 6, if you just get up on somebody, when is it stacks every... Structures are double damage, 8 seconds. Okay, each second it stacks. So if you just stand next to them for a total of 3 seconds, they're slowed by 24%. And that should let you stick on them pretty well. You know, you get up to 8 stacks. It's just really hard to get away. And it's quite a lot of damage. I mean, total magic damage at level 6 is 320 if they stand in it the whole time. Which it's hard to escape when you're taunted, because the taunt's going to automatically give you 2 stacks. For 16% slow. And then as you're trying to run away, he's going to be applying more stacks. So if he just rolls up, hits you with the power ball, which is going to slow you for a little bit, ults, then taunts, it's just really, really hard to escape him if you don't have a dash or a flash. And guess what? There's a lot of people that don't have dashes and flashes, especially AD carries right now. You know, Jhin doesn't have a dash or a flash. Draven, no dash or flash. Twitch, nope. Misfortune, nope. So it's going to be really, really hard to get away from him for a lot of the popular AD carries because people aren't playing like Ezreal, Lucian. Tristana can get away with her jump, but there are a lot of AD carries that can't. So, and it's on a pretty low cooldown, so you could even go like Zeke's or something if you wanted to, and have that up quite a lot. So I think Rammus is going to be very, very strong on this patch because guess what? Lethality's coming out. We'll talk about that here in a second. But everyone's going to be trying out these new Lethality champions, Lethality builds, and you know who shatters AD melee champions? Rammus does. So Rammus is going to be just destroying the Zeds, the Talons, the top lane Rivens, the Pantheons. He's going to crush all of them really hard. Because now, especially with mid lane, people are going to want to run AD mid. They're going to want to run Talon, or maybe people might even try like Lethality Lucian middle. They're going to be trying out all of this AD stuff, and that's going to imbalance team comps where they're going to be overloaded on AD because you're almost certainly going to have an AD top lane, an AD jungle, and now you're probably going to AD bottom, obviously, and now you're probably going to have some AD mids also. So I think Rammus is really going to exploit the 3 and 4 AD teams. And even if it's not like total AD, he still is good against other stuff because he can just roll in and get on the AD carry pretty easily a lot of the time and just ignore everybody else. So I think he's going to be super strong. In the jungle, he'll probably go... Oh, Thornmail is also massive on him because now he applies Cold Steel, Grievous Wounds, and reflects additional damage and has health and armor on it. It is a more expensive item, but it's definitely worth the cost for admission, especially for Rammus. They were saying in the patch notes, oh, it's kind of a nerf to Rammus because it's going to have less armor on it with the Thornmail. No, it's a buff because Rammus right now wants armor, but he also needs health because you know what goes really well when you have a lot of armor and magic resist? Health, because it makes your health that much more valuable. You already have a ton of armor on your W. Like the extra little bit on Thornmail, losing 25 armor in exchange for getting all that extra health is definitely worth it for Rammus. So I think it's going to be massive. I think he's going to be really, really good on this patch. So in the jungle, you probably go Cinderhulk, Thorn, and then I would actually just go for utility stuff. I would honestly go like a Zeke's Harbinger or Zeke's whatever, Convergence in the jungle. It gives you AD, it gives you cooldown reduction that you want, and you're so good at sticking to people with your ultimate and with your taunt that it's going to let your AD carry or whomever you tag with your Zeke's, it's going to let them just really go to town, killing them. Now, keep in mind with Zeke's too, like with Rammus, you're almost always going to be near someone. And unlike Knight's Vow, there is no cooldown on who you target with Zeke's. So whenever your ultimate is up, you can just tag a new person. Rolling up to gank top lane, tag him with Zeke's. Might as well. Just give him 50% extra damage. Rolling up to mid lane, tag him with Zeke's. So I think that's potentially very powerful. I think that Knight's Vow is very good, and obviously Dead Man's Play is pretty good on him as well. So I think that'll be powerful. Now, if you want to run him in support, and I'm not entirely sure this is viable, but it might be, you could go Talisman, Ninja Tabi, Ruby Sightstone, and then Zeke's Knight's Vow. So, you know, the benefits to Rammus in support would be you have very, very good roaming. So you can roam mid lane or you can roam jungle if you think you're going to have good matchups there. Kind of like the Fiddlesticks concept. Except you don't have as good a push in lane. And by as good of, I mean virtually no push in lane. So if they have a bunch of like AD and AD assassins and you just really want to try to crush them, maybe that would be a good move. I guess you can powerball the wave in lane and that'll do some damage. You can, oh, I know, you could like defensive ball curl as the wave is rolling up and just get the wave to auto attack you. That might actually be okay wave clear, to be honest. I kind of want to try that in normals. Because if you just like roll up and the minion wave just starts attacking you and you have spiked shell on and defensive ball curl, they'll just kill themselves. Yeah, enemies, not champions, enemies. So yeah, all the little minions are going to be attacking you and just doing like a ton of damage to themselves. That might actually be decent wave clear. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. I'll definitely try him out in normals and see like what's up. But yeah, I think he's going to be a breakout champion of this patch for sure. How are we looking on time? Way over? That's not that bad, but we do need to pick it up a little bit. Singed, I don't think it's going to matter. These are buffs for Singed for sure. It's a lot of text, so it's totally possible that I'm wrong about this, but here's the deal. He's going to have more damage, right? So he's going to get, you know, extra ability power on his smoke, which is good, but they are taking away damage also. So, you know, you're getting 20 more, so you're going to need 100 extra AP to equalize losing the 20 here because you're gaining a 0.2 ratio. So you're going to have an extra 100 AP, and then anything past 100 AP, you're actually gaining. But, you know, how often does Singe get a ton of AP? He gets a little bit, but, you know, Singe is not the type of character it's going to be, you know, cracking like 500 AP or something. He'll probably get like 200 to 300, maybe. This is an interesting change. Mega Adhesive now grounds people so they can't flash out of it. Costs a little bit less mana. It's still very expensive. Has higher cooldown at level 1 or 2. I don't know if you level the second or third Ascent. I mean, I'm not a Cinch expert. Obviously, you level Poison Trail first. He does get slightly more bonus stats. Not a huge deal. It's okay. Less mana cost is good. Fling mana cost a little bit cheaper early on. It's good. Now, when he passes within 225 range of a champion, he gets an extra 20% move speed for 2 seconds, and it has a cooldown. So this will let him run around and kite more. Wow, actually, I didn't see it. Wow, that's a lot of base stats. Holy cow, hold on. That's like almost 70 extra base health. Ooh. That's going to make him really, really strong in the early game. As far as, like, tankiness. Maybe he will be a lot better than I think he's going to be. More clear visually. Okay, so he does a little bit less damage in the early game, but he has more utility with his Mega Adhesive. I mean, you can just straight throw this on people, and they're not going to be able to flash or escape. That right there in a team fight can have a lot of utility. You know, you just throw this on your AD carry when the assassin's about to dive them. Like, that's pretty good. Then now you can proxy a lot better with your drift. Like, you don't get the extra stats off of having mana. So I don't know how that's going to affect his itemization. But, you know, I could see going, like, now you could go something like Rod of the Ages into, like, just kind of like an old school Singe build. You know, you get your Rod of the Ages. Or, actually, what's that other item? I mean, you could go Rod. But that other thing that, like, gives you the bonus movement speed, that also has Catalyst in it. I can't remember what the name of it is offhand. Crap, what? Oh, okay, let me just look up Rod of the Ages. It'll probably show up. We'll check it out here in a second. But Rod would be pretty good. That would give you the ability power and obviously the health and the mana. He wants all of this stuff. You get extra mana. Mana spent gives you health. So that could be good. Does it not build out of that anymore? What does that item build out of? Righteous Glory. That's what it was. I have seen people getting this item more now, lately, but I haven't actually read it in a while. Okay, yes, they did change it, so it's towards enemies for 4 seconds. Okay, that's only moving towards enemies. I mean, you might want that as Singe. This would be good on Rammus. Oh, it's pretty cheap. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good item on Rammus, for sure. How do the stats line up? Okay. I don't think he would be interested in this because you need to. I mean, maybe like if you're going to be an engaged Singe and you want to run at people and like start a team fight, then you can do that. I don't know. It doesn't give you movement speed if you're running away though, which is what Singe is usually doing. So I don't know, but I think the itemization is going to change. I think that going something like Boots of Swiftness, Rod of the Ages, like Rylai's, Leandri's, the new Thornmail is also going to be great on Singed. And maybe like Dead Man's Plate. So I think this will give you enough AP and sort of sticking power and tankiness to make you a damage threat while also at the same time giving you some resiliency. I think he'll be good. Okay. I'm gonna say that I think he's gonna be good. Because I think the combination of Thornmail, his ability to proxy a lot better with that drift mechanic, and his mega adhesive is going to make him a lot better. We'll see. I still probably don't want to see him in my games most of the time because a lot of times Singed just tend to feed a lot, and they just think that's okay because there's this, you know, almost meme out there. It's like feed to win with Singed. But I think it'll be good. I think it'll be good for him. So who would you pick him into? Historically, he's good against other tanks because he can just run around and do his thing, and they just can't really pressure him early at all. He just causes so much chaos on a map. I don't know. I think he'll be good. He may not be as good against like some of these. I don't know. We'll just see. I'm not essential. He's really one of those champions that you need to put a lot of time into to see, like, to know all of his ins and outs and all of his matchups. This looks good. This looks really good for Singed, and they've nerfed the other tanks quite a bit already. He got a new item, like I said, and he got a lot of changes to some of his core abilities, so I think he's going to be really strong. Okay, Taric. I think Taric is probably still going to have a lot of problems. I mean, the deal is, like, a major problem with Taric is his early game, right? So he can just get completely bullied around early. They are addressing this some, and they do talk about this up here, I think, at some point. Like, Dazzle does do 100 damage now at level 1, which is a lot. So, you know, that's good. This is going to be your 1-point wonder here. You wouldn't level up Dazzle anymore. It's just 1.25 seconds at all ranks, so he doesn't get as much of a stun later on in the game. So it's just your 1-point wonder. This could give you some pretty good all-in potential with like a Draven or something early on, though, if you land the stun. So against an immobile 80 carry that doesn't have a dash, if you can walk up and land the stun on him, then you might actually be able to kill somebody at level 2, potentially. Like if you get your armor shield buff, you get your W, and then you get your E, you might be able to all-in and kill people. Maybe. Maybe. I still don't think that's going to make him a powerhouse early, but it certainly gives him something he can do early on. Now his heal, like people were saying, oh man, this is OP because he gets 5 stacks and all that stuff. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It is stronger, but you have to keep in mind the base heal is much, much lower on average, right? So now it is, oh, they added an AP ratio to it. But he doesn't get a lot of AP though. Why would they do that? Like, the big problem with Taric is that his scaling is so, like, scattered and confused. Like, some abilities you want AP, sometimes you want maximum health, sometimes you want plus healing, sometimes you want armor. Like, he scales off of all these different stats, but it has no cohesion. Like, because you can't get every stat in the game. You need to be able to itemize into things that are appropriate. Like, either just tank items, like plus health, or AP items. I mean, I guess they're trying to say, look, you can scale off of ability power or maximum health, either one. But it just spreads his itemization too thin a lot of the time, I think. He just doesn't have a clear, cohesive identity. I mean, before, like, old school Taric, before this rework, I guess it was like a year or two ago before they reworked him, it was armor. That is his thing. He is 100%, you stack a ton of armor and you pick him into enemy comps that have a lot of armor. Or that, yeah, they have armor, so you can shatter it and you have extra armor on your team. He used to give an armor aura. His W used to explode and, like, shred the armor of people. And basically everything in his kit scaled off of armor. And that was his whole identity. Is he stunned people, he had pretty good burst damage, and he gave a lot of armor. But now he just, like, he kind of has a heal, he kind of has a stun, he kind of has a shield. All of it scales off of different abilities. So I think this is a problem. So he's not going to get AP that often. And so this base is really, now it's 30 instead of up to 60 if you maxed it out. And it's 1% of his maximum health instead of 1.5. So it's good that you can get 5 ranks of this instead of 3 now. But it only does half of the base heal that it used to. So if we look here, the 5 charges is greater than 3 charges, but 30 base heal is less than 60 base heal. So let's just look at a scenario here. Let's say that it also costs a lot more, which is consequential. So it costs 70 up to 110. Now, it doesn't cost as much. It used to cost 140 at the top end. So it costs more early. I guess it equals out at level 2, which is not a huge deal. So you'll level this. You're going to level up your heal first. Let's see. If you had 3 charges, let's say you have 1,000 HP, and I really just don't even think you're going to build ability power on him at all. So I'm just going to assume no ability power. I mean, I guess you could get like Ardent Censer, but it's iffy. That would be a 3rd or 4th item at best. So let's say you have 1,000 HP and you have this ranked out all the way to level 5, right? So now you would only get, let's say you have 5 stacks now versus the 3 stacks then. 3 stacks then would give you 90, or no, 3 stacks then would give you 180, plus 1.5 times 3 is 4.5%. That would be 45. All right, so it gives you 225 heal. And now with the new system, let's say you have 5 stacks. What was it? It was 225. So now you have 150 plus it's 1% per stack, so that's 5% plus 50. Okay, so it's 200. All right, so 200 divided by, it's about 12% less. Is that even right? 20. There's 25 less off of 225. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so it's about 11 or 12% less. So you're actually getting less heal than you used to if it's max stacked. Now, so just like straight up apples to apples comparison, it's less heal, okay, under most scenarios. However, you can stack it faster, so your bravado attacks automatically give you more healing in the 15 seconds. So you can stack it a lot faster if you just, you know, do your armor thing, attack, dazzle, attack. You're basically going to be at 4 stacks. So I don't know. It's difficult to evaluate this, but I don't think this addresses Taric's core gameplay problem, which is that a lot of his stuff leaves a lot of room for outplay, especially his E. It's very close range on virtually everything. His cooldowns are really high unless you're in combat, like actively attacking them over and over and over again, which makes you very vulnerable to counterattack. So it's kind of like the Diana situation where it's like, yeah, he could have some good burst healing here where he has to keep, but he has to stick into a fight and continually auto attack, which opens himself up to getting caught out. Whereas someone like Sona also has great team fighting capabilities, just like Taric does, but she can be a lot safer. She doesn't have to get in there and auto attack as much. She's ranged, or like, you know, Janna also has great shielding and healing, but she can play much safer. I don't think there's enough payoff for Taric right now to justify picking him over other healer shielders. I mean, he's okay. Like, I don't know. If this shores up his early game enough, then this is definitely a buff to him, you know, because you can stack this faster. Like, but that's, once again, that's only if you're actively in combat attacking and it's a really long fight and you get to cast it more and more. So if you're just sitting there and you just roll up with max stacks, as we just saw, you're going to actually have 12% less healing on your first heal. It's only better if you're in combat actively attacking with these bravado attacks. So it's okay. I don't expect to see him a lot. It's okay. He's definitely better than he was. Yorick, and we'll pick it up. We'll pick up the pace here a little bit. I'd like to try to get this done in about 2 hours. It's tough to say. I'm not entirely sure. Like, they attack on landings. That means they all get a free hit. Historically, whenever you add in just extra, like, really powerful quality of life changes, then it's good. So I think this is definitely going to be a buff for Yorick. Yeah, so they react a lot. They can jump like 400 more units onto somebody, I think, which is huge. And having a much lower cooldown, I mean, 40 seconds at level 3 is a huge deal. That means this is just pretty much always going to be up when you have CDR. And having, like, a third more health, it's going to take forever for someone to kill that thing. I think that's stronger. I mean, I'm not sure where he's going to fit into the meta. He's kind of an odd duck. But he can be a pretty powerful split pusher. I mean, I think he'll still be niche. Like, I don't think he's going to be top 5. Maybe top 10. I have seen some good Yoricks. Most of the time, he does very well because people don't understand what he does, and he catches people off guard because he's such a weird pick. But he could potentially be... He's stronger. I mean, this helps. That's all I can say. I don't think you're going to see a ton of Yorick, but he's stronger. I still think he probably gets outclassed by other top laners. But I'm not 100% about that. Okay, they changed Nunu mid-patch last time. They give him less armor and less health per 5. I don't think this is going to make a huge difference. I still think he's going to be a top-tier jungler for solo queue. The Zac, stretching strike, second hit, I don't think is going to matter that much. Maybe it matters a little bit if people can fan out and not get hit, but I don't know. I still think that Zac is probably overpowered. But we'll see. Like, these are both still going to be top tier junglers. Okay, Thornmail. So this is something that I think could potentially be meta changing. And the reason is this just has so much utility on it. So you're paying more gold for it. It costs 2,900 now instead of the like 22 or 2,300. But it's a more well-rounded item. So it's not just a niche pure armor item anymore. It's got health, armor, it's got thorns on it still, which is good. Then it also applies grievous wounds, and it also applies cold steel when people attack. So I think it's worth it. I mean, you're basically paying about 740 gold for grievous wounds, cold steel, and damage reflect. And the question is that too expensive? I think that it's not. I think those are very valuable modifiers. To have all of those on one item is pretty huge. So it's going to free you up, a lot of these tanks, to get more utility items, because this is going to have everything. You know, it's going to have everything that you could ever want as a tank on it, just about. And so you can get this, and then like Knight's Vow and Zeke's, I think would be very powerful on junglers. I don't see a lot of people going for that utility stuff right now, but I think that if you have an Enchanter support, Sona, Janna, something like that, and then you have a jungler like a Rammus that goes Thornmail, Knight's Vow, Zeke's, I think that's going to be very, very powerful. If people build that kind of supporter, tank, jungler type of thing, I think that would be pretty dang powerful in this patch. But anyways, yeah, so this is going to hurt double lifesteal champions quite a lot, because it's going to apply the grievous wounds, because now the tank can have it. You don't have to rely on your AD carry getting executioners as much anymore. Although it must be said that if they don't auto attack you, then they don't get grievous wounds. So if for some reason you're not forcing them to attack you, then they won't get the grievous wounds, whereas the AD carry gets to choose where they apply it. So in practice, it shouldn't matter that much. Like, if Rammus is right in the face of your AD carry, they're going to have to attack him. Or if, like, Zac is right on your AD carry, they're going to have to attack him. So I think this is going to hurt AD carries. Definitely dial them back a little bit later in the game once champions get this. Although they might, this could just be like a straight rush item now. 25 plus 10% bonus armor. Be 35, somewhere between 35 to 45 damage most games. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's powerful. Obviously, it's very good on Rammus, but, you know, it'll be good on a lot of champions. Now, it's going to hurt Soraka quite a bit, because if your Rammus is on your AD carry and your AD carry has to attack him, then it's going to put the grievous wounds on Soraka. So I think that that's going to force Soraka down a little bit on the pecking order, because this is just one more way that they can completely screw her over with her healing. I think it could hurt potentially Vlad, Mundo, Zac, but they can circumvent the situation by just not attacking the tank. like Vlad is a caster, so he doesn't have to auto attack the tank if he doesn't want to. Zac similar, so is Mundo. You know, they don't have to attack the tank, so there is a way to play around it for them. But AD carries do have to attack the tank a lot of times. So I think any AD carry that's really heavily predicated on lifestealing, I mean, this will hurt Draven a little bit for sure. But a lot of AD carries aren't really running. They aren't really running lifesteal anyways. They're going these Energizer builds with like IE, Rapid Fire Cannon, Shiv, and then they're just counting on having an Enchanter support a lot of times. Your Janna, your Sona, your Nami, stuff like that to do it. This raises the stock of Janna quite a bit also because guess what? Grievous Wounds doesn't affect shields. So just what we needed, more Janna buffs, right? Just what I needed. I love Janna. But this definitely makes Janna a lot better because she's the best shielder out there. So, and this, it doesn't matter. So this is going to hurt Sona to some extent. It's going to hurt Soraka big time. And it's going to hurt Nami pretty significantly too. In like mid to late game healing with these tanks. Because this is going to be a very popular item on tanks, I think. The Randuin's buff's nice. Remember, the cold steel off of Randuin's doesn't stack with Thornmail, so if someone gets Thornmail, they're probably not going to get Randuin's, or if they get Randuin's, they're not going to get Thornmail. This might temper Thornmail a little bit to where people would rather get Randuin's. They're trying to tempt you to have you make that choice, because Randuin's reduces critical strikes by quite a lot. So if against a super fed AD carry that doesn't have any lifesteal on them, then they might just go for Randuin's. Okay, so let's move on. So yes, important. Potentially, I'm not sure it's going to completely define a meta, but I think it's definitely going to affect some champion choices. The coin line, now I didn't put this in the notes, but I think this is going to be huge. Let me go ahead and put it in here. Someone pointed that out last night. Okay, so we'll do big buff. Okay, and why is this a big buff? Now, as soon as this got released in the PvE, I talked about this, that it was going to be really good for Rakan and Janna, and that's, they literally mentioned them by name right here. This is huge. Okay, the extra skill point is nice on some champions. It is nice on Rakan because he has very long cooldowns, and his cooldowns get reduced by 2 seconds whenever he gets that skill potion. So the skill potion is very good on Rakan, and he will miss having that. However, the 8% move speed is really, really big because a lot of times what happens with Rakan is when he engages, his allies might have a hard time following up because he's just so fast and he can jump so far forward that sometimes, you know, they might only get one hit in before the person is uncharmed. Well, now they're going to get to move up a lot faster, potentially get multi hits in. And by the way, this is about 25 move speed. 8% of a lot of champions' base move speed is about 25% move speed. So it's about the same as giving everybody a free boot, a free brown boot as they're running towards you. Which is big. This is huge on Janna. I mean, this is actually what her passive is right now. Allies gain 8% when moving towards you. This just doubles her passive, and that her whole kit is balanced around kiting people backwards, shielding, peeling. So this is perfect for Janna. And Janna really didn't need that elixir of skill because her W is nice to level up, but it's not like 100% like crucial to her kit like the jump is for Rakan, the shield. So it doesn't hurt her losing the skill potion as much as it hurts Rakan. They both like the new bonus though, so it's kind of like slightly positive for Rakan and huge for Janna. It's way, way bigger on Janna. Other champions that might like this, I mean, pretty much anybody. I don't think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to change decisions, right? I don't think people are going to all of a sudden go coin that weren't going coin just for this passive. So I think in actual practice, it's not going to change what people build most of the time. But it is a nice improvement for a lot of champions down the line. So I think it's good. And by the way, I would be building coin on basically everybody. It's so much gold. I've talked about this on my stream a lot. People are like, oh, why are you going coin on Nami, or why are you going coin on Sona? It's so much gold. I mean, by the end of the game, like a 35-minute game, you're gonna have over 2,000 gold on it. It's an absolutely bonkers amount of gold. So when your opponent is finishing up their third item, you're going to have your fourth item because most support items are around 2,100 gold. So it's a really, really big deal in terms of your income. And the mana coin gives you virtually infinite mana in lane. Like, it's so much mana. It's way, way, way more than Spell Thieves. So I just think it makes it powerful. Now, yes, you do lose the AP, but as I talked about before, I think I did this on the last patch. Remember that the AP on Eye of the Watchers, which is what you would typically get, is 35 times AP is worth 21.75 gold each. So you're getting about 760 gold worth of stats on it. But I just talked about the, and you're going to get like over 2,000 gold on coin. Right, so on Spell Thieves, in the laning phase, it's good, right? Because you get to hit people and you're just constantly proccing it. For the first like levels 1 to 5, you're proccing it and you're getting all this gold, and you're like, okay, I'm making about the same amount of gold that I may have made on coins. This is okay. But then once the enemy comes back with their BF sword, and once the jungler starts showing up and applying more pressure, or once the tower falls, you can't just go up and attack people in the mid game anymore. 15 minutes in, you can't just walk up and try to auto-attack that Syndra, or that Ahri, or even the Draven, who has a Death's Dance, right? They're just going to kill you. And so you basically end up sitting there getting no gold, just your 2 gold per 5 that the item naturally gives. You get no gold for the rest of the game, basically, after 12 minutes or so. You're not going to be getting any more gold. And so that's when coin starts really ramping up, because you get the coins all the time. Like, you just walk into a lane and boom, there's a bunch of gold. So it doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, if you're getting zoned off of the coins, which is a possibility, then you're going to lose some money, but you're much, much more likely to be able to convert more money later on in the game with coin. And that's where it starts taking off. So as long as you're, by 20 minutes, you're going to have made more than 760 gold worth of stats. Or worth of, your gold is going to be worth more than the AP on Watchers, is what I'm trying to say. So early on, if you need a power spike, from levels, or from like 12 to 20 minutes or so, then yes, Spell Thieves can be better. So like on a Zyra or on a Brand or something like that, you'll still want Spell Thieves, because you really want to try to force kills when you're level 6. But on someone like a Sona, who already scales pretty well into the late game, or like a Nami, this gives you much smoother scaling as the game progresses, because you're probably not going to pressure and kill people as much earlier on. So I think Ancient Coin is already really strong for solo queue for most enchanters, and even on tanks. If you're not getting poked out early, or you have some innate sustain, then you can go coin into Talisman Ruby Sightstone, and that's a really powerful build on a lot of tanks. It's what I do on Rakan a lot of the time. So I think that this just makes a good item even better. Okay, just type that up there. All right. Okay, so the lethality changes. This is another one that's pretty big. There's a lot of big changes. Like every patch, they're just throwing haymakers. I think it's really cool. They're switching up the meta constantly. So I don't know how the exact math on this is going to work out. I mean, let me look here and just see. Sorry if you guys can hear my daughter screaming in the other room. I think my wife's changing her or something. No. What? They're calling this armor penetration? Oh god. Holy crap. Dude, this site kills me sometimes with, like, their pop-up noise. Okay, lethality. Let me close the door here real quick. There we go. Alright, like I said, I'm not just leaving her dying in the other room. If you hear my daughter, my wife's messing with her over there. Okay, so lethality is 0.6 plus 0.4 times level divided by 18. Example, 20 lethality causes a target level 18 to take damage as if they had 20 less armor. So a target with 30 armor would be treated as though it had 10 armor. Okay, well, I'm not going to work through all of this math here for everything, for all of the items, because I know most people on the channel are support players. But what this boils down to, the way that they're changing it and the way they word it in the patch is solo lane champions are going to be stronger with lethality, because now it's based on, the scaling is based on your level rather than the level of your enemy. So if you're a mid laner that's level 12 and you go down and you attack a bot laner that's level 10, prior to this patch, the lethality would be calculated based on the level 10 bot laner. But after this patch, the lethality is Jesus, it's loud. But on this patch, the lethality is calculated on you, which means it's going to be calculated on level 12, which will give you a couple more points of armor penetration, probably, depending on the scaling. You can do that formula yourself and figure it out, depending on whichever item configuration you want. But what that means is, yeah, Talon, Zed, Pantheon, Wukong, all of these champions are going to do more damage. And then champions in the bot lane, conversely, like Varus or Misfortune or whatever, will benefit less from lethality. Because, you know, now they're level 10 attacking the level 12 Zed, so it's based on their level 10 rather than Zed's level 12. So this is good for solo lanes, and it's bad for bot lane lethality users. And they have said that down here, that I don't remember where they said it, but they said it somewhere where they don't want to see it in bottom lane, or they really don't want it to take over bottom lane like it did in the past. Okay, so there's that. However, let's look at a couple other things. Now, this is pretty big. After killing an enemy, your next damaging spell will deal 40 bonus damage to all enemies it hits with a 30-second cooldown. Now, Serrated Dirk is part of Duskblade here. So that's an item you can get for 1100. It already gives 10 lethality. It gives pretty decent attack damage, and now it gives this bonus. So killing an enemy also counts as a lane minion. So if you kill a lane minion, then your next damaging spell or attack is going to deal extra damage. Damaging spell, not attack. So if you just auto attack, kill a minion, and then cast a spell to hit an enemy, then it's going to do a ton of extra damage. So if you're Jhin, you just auto attack, kill a creep, throw a grenade at him, 40 extra bonus damage to all enemies it hits. So it's 40 extra damage to the person that you hit and everyone else. So if it's an area of effect thing like a Jhin grenade or a Misfortune Make It Rain, you can cast Make It Rain on both the if the support and the ADC are standing close together, kill a minion, Make It Rain, hit both of them for an extra 40 damage for 80 total extra damage. And you can do that every 30 seconds. I think that's pretty gross. I think that's really, really powerful sort of early game first item purchase that's a spike. So I think that's going to be really good. Also, obviously, like mid lane with a Zed, you kill a minion, hit him with your Q, boom, extra damage. Or Talon, hit a minion, hit him with your Rake, boom, extra damage. So I think it'll be nice. Pantheon top lane, disgusting. Kill a minion, spear him. You know, there are a lot of different champions that will really abuse this pretty hardcore. So I think that's number one, is that it's built, the item path is now much nicer. Now it doesn't give you 20 out of combat movement speed, but this is not going to matter like in the laning phase as much, right? So this is going to hurt your roaming a little bit, but they're compensating for that by giving you this extra bonus right here, which I think is worth, for sure it's worth. Okay, and this could be a meta-defining item. I think if anything really changes the meta a lot, it's going to be this item, Duskblade. So they're changing around this item quite a lot, and I think it's going to make a huge splash, especially for AD carries and top laners, because they have bushes really close to them. So, let me show you Duskblade here. Okay, so this item is disgusting. All right, so first of all, they lower the damage on it. I think, was it by 10 or 5? 10. Significant. right? So they lowered that. They increased the lethality. So it doesn't quite make up for it. It doesn't give the 20 out of combat movement speed. It does give 10% cooldown reduction, which is nice. But here's the big deal. Now it is a single item power spike, like huge. Like I can't overstate just how ridiculously overpowered this might be in lane, potentially with Night Stalker. So the old passive was you got extra 2 damage based on the amount of lethality that you'd purchase. So Duskblade really didn't become that powerful until you had 2 or 3 other lethality items, and you would get some extra damage out of it. This is no longer based on lethality. This is strictly based on your level, and it's bonus physical damage with no cooldown. Let me repeat that. There is no cooldown on this item. Okay? No cooldown. So, Serrated Dirk has a 30-second cooldown. You only get that 40 bonus damage. You can only proc it once every 30 seconds. Good, but fair, because you can only do it like once per wave. Relatively fair. There's nothing fair about this Duskblade unique passive, right? So after you're unseen for 1 second, hint, step into a bush. Boom, unseen for 1 second. As long as you just have a pink in the bush or something and they don't have it warded, boom. Step into a bush for 1 second. Your next basic attack deals 105 to 360 extra on-hit damage and slows by 99% for a quarter of a second. So that basically means you get to bust them up, and then they're not going to run, and you're going to get an extra free shot on them. So it's like getting 2 shots on them, because they're not going to be able to retreat for a second, or like a quarter of a second there. Now it lasts 5 seconds after being seen by an enemy. No internal cooldown. Like, my god, this is going to be so much damage. So when you complete this by level 9, you're getting an extra 225 damage on your autos on no cooldown. No cooldown. Like, this is gonna be disgusting. I mean, think about Misfortune with her Q. Think about Misfortune with her Q. Like, I think Misfortune is gonna be a top... I thought she was already a top 5 last patch. She might be... I don't know if the best on this patch. That's strong. That's hyperbolic. But I think she's definitely a top 3. It's like Draven, Twitch, Misfortune probably this patch. This is so disgusting. Like, you can't even lane against her anymore. Like, it's practically going to one-shot people. I mean, look at Misfortune here. Like, this is so perfect for her kit. Because her Q applies on hit. So you can Q somebody and bounce it off of a minion to go back and hit the other person, and that's going to trigger the Duskblade passive. Now, the Duskblade passive cannot crit, thank God. Or it would crit off of that too. But yeah, it can't crit. However, it's gonna, because it's an on hit instead of an on attack ability, but it still is gonna do a ton of damage. So how much damage, you ask? Okay, well, let's just assume that you have your Duskblade. Well, let me do this again. I think I may have wonked up this math a little bit when I was doing this really tired last night. But let's say you're level 9. You just completed your Duskblade. She only has 52 attack damage, which is pretty low, actually. For a level 9, maybe they nerfed her attack damage a long time ago. That was part of her deal. But anyways, it is what it is. So, she has 52 attack damage. Duskblade gives 55. Let's say you have 52 plus 55. And then let's say off of your runes, masteries, all that kind of stuff, you get plus 13. Okay, that makes sense. 120. Okay, so let's just do 120 for easy math here. Then if you look at the Q, your Q is 100 damage plus 100% of your AD. All right, that's the base damage on a Q. All right, 100 plus 100%, and it's going to crit because in this scenario, I'm going to say that you last hit a minion because that's how you should be using your Qs. You last hit a minion and it bounces to them. All right, your passive is going to give you 80% extra bonus 80 physical damage on your love tap. So you're going to love tap the person because they're not going to be the last person that you hit. So this does apply on hit, right? So it says your previous basic attack, but this applies, the double up applies on hits. I believe it does. It can apply the double up proc. And then you get 225 damage. So you run through all of that math. That means your 1 Q on somebody when you kill a minion and the Q bounces to somebody else and you have the Duskblade proc. Excuse me. 857 damage. 857 damage. Like, I think that might literally one-shot a support. If it's a squishy support. Like, if it's a Nami or something at level 9, they're not going to have that much more health. Like, you're just going to see the entire life bar just disappear. If that doesn't kill him, you can certainly, like, make it rain, slow him down, ult, and then just, like, delete it. Like, there's no way they can fight you in that. So that is just disgusting. So now I think that the build on her is going to be Duskblade, Black Cleaver, probably Ghostblade, and then Last Whisper, and you're just going to murder people. Jin's also going to like that item with the Energizer builds, and I think all Lethality Assassins are going to like it. I mean, Jin can just walk in the bush, go up with his 4th shot, boom, murder somebody. You know who's really going to like this, though, and I know a lot of top laners are going to hate this? Pantheon. So if he rushes this item, first item, historically he's gotten Ghostblade, but trust me, he's going to want this item next, probably. So now he can't abuse it as much because it's an auto attack and not a spell. Now that one little thing, the component we were talking about, this thing, he's going to abuse the crap out of this, the Serrated Dirk. But he can't just continually walk into a bush and walk out and proc this. But still, like, he can walk into a bush, and then once he's off his cooldowns, then he can go up and do a full rotation to you. Just add on 225 to, you know, Spear Shot plus Heartseeker. And you can see really quickly that that's going to one-shot people pretty fast. So, yeah, I think it's going to be disgusting. Obviously, like, Zed or Talon rolling up on you with that, too, is going to do a ton of damage. I was saying, like, top lane and bot lane because they could just abuse that in the laning phase so massively, especially Misfortune and probably Jin. I think it's going to be a meta-defining item. I think it's going to be really, really, really good. Now, if you look at the other items, I'm not as impressed with the other ones. They're okay. Ghostblade has a little bit less damage, but it has more lethality. So this is about a push. That's probably about equal in terms of damage. But now you get 40 out of combat movement speed. So that's pretty massive. I mean, that's like getting 15% move speed just permanently outside of combat. So I think you're going to see this definitely on like Zed, Talon, maybe the new guy, Kayn. I'm not sure, but this is less impressive. I don't think this is going to be as meta defining, but I think that if people want to roam, they might get this. I don't see many scenarios where you don't rush Duskblade on everybody who's a lethality user though. Because of that passive, it's just disgusting. But there might be some scenarios where you'd get this. I imagine this will probably be a second item on champions that want that, so you'd rush Duskblade and then Ghostblade on something like Zed. And then Edge of Night is really bizarre. It's more expensive than the other two. It has the same damage, the same lethality, but now it grants 250 health instead of magic resist. It's like, okay, that's better against AD champions. But it just doesn't have nearly the power of the other items. I mean, I guess if you think that they're going to have a bunch of crowd control for you when you initiate into a fight, maybe you get it. I don't know. I mean, I could see it, but I think it's going to be rare. I think that most people were probably just, most lethality users are probably going to go something like Duskblade, Ghostblade, Cleaver, or maybe Duskblade, Cleaver, Ghostblade, something like that. I would imagine would be how it would go down. And then they might get or Dominic's Regards after that. But yeah, I think that on some champions, it's going to be just disgusting and really, really good. Okay, so what's going to be going on with the meta predictions here? Dang, those patch notes took a while. I got to get moving quickly here. I got to get moving quickly. There was so much to talk about. So much to talk about. Okay. Enchanter supports, I think they're still going to be top of the line. I say this every patch. Nothing has changed enough to knock them off their roost. I do think that tank supports are better. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I still think that overall, Sona, Janna, probably Nami. Nami's gone up a lot in my estimation after playing her a little bit in certain matchups. She's particularly good against Jhin and Misfortune, who I think are going to come back because you can knock them out of their ults with your wave. But yeah, I think that that it's just so strong. Like, the healing stats really good. You have such great itemization with your Redemption, Mikhails, Athenes, Ardent. Such flexibility. You could go Mikhails if they have a lot of CC. You can go Redemption if you want team fights. You can go Ardent if you really want to buff up your AD carry. So I just think that the Enchanters are still going to run the show, with some tanks being useful in there as well. Itemization is also very nice. I talked about this before, with Fairy Charms being so easy to purchase, and just a component of every single every single item that you want as an Enchanter support. It just gives you a ton of extra mana early on, particularly when combined with Ancient Coin. On Sona or Nami, you're just not going to run out of mana in lane when you're just spamming all of these Fairy Charms plus Ancient Coin. It's just, they're really good, and that's just not going to change that much. So just, pay attention to which item you want. Sometimes you might need to rush Redemption, other times it'd be Mikhails, other times it might be Ardent Censer. There's a lot more flexibility now than there ever has been, I think, for support itemization, and so you can't just look at, what I list on a guide, or just like what Mobile Fire lists, or what you see a pro player build. There's just not a cookie cutter build for Enchanter supports, which is good, I think. Okay, I think that tank supports are definitely stronger. I have been playing with Zeke's Convergence a lot over the last patch, and I'm convinced it is a very good item. The key is you have to hold people still so that your AD carry can actually attack. If your AD carry has to run the entire time, or if the enemy just disengages whenever you use Zeke's, it's not as powerful. But that 50% extra damage, especially on crit AD carries, because remember, crit applies, your 50% is going to be based on that crit also. Then I think a lot of these Energizer builds with the IE, Static Shiv, Rapid Fire Cannon makes Zeke's very, very good. So it's very good on like a Tristana, on Caitlyn. Draven has a different build, but it's really good on him. Twitch has a different build, but it's really good on him. So I think all of that is great. Knight's Vow is a powerhouse right now. It's very good at protecting your immobile, squishy champions. Right, Sadie? Is that right? So I think that's going to be really is really nice. So like a good combination is to build something like, this is what I do on Rakan a lot. It's like Talisman, Ruby Sightstone, Zeke's, Knight's Vow. Gives you the great steroid of Zeke's, gives you some nice utility with your Talisman and your Ruby Sightstone, gives you the cooldown on Knight's Vow, Zeke's, and Talisman whenever you get the Ruby Sightstone. And on your Sweeper. So I think that's a really good combination. I do think that tanks are definitely viable. They're definitely viable now, much more so than they have been for a lot of the season. Locket, also great scaling against AP comps. I don't think there's going to be a lot of AP comps in this meta. Just maybe like a burst assassin mid with AP, but that's about it. I really don't see people playing a lot of AP junglers or AP tops or even AP supports. I think it's going to be defined by lethality assassins and tanks. So Talisman probably not going to be as much of a factor, but that's fine. You can still just go Knight's Vow and Zeke's, and that's great. Okay. So two types of tanks that I mentioned before. You've got your Ardent tanks, and I think this is primarily like Blitz, Gragas, Nunu, Rakan, and Sejuani. These are all champions that can potentially build Ardent Censer, which is an excellent, third or fourth item if you just need that extra power spike on an AD carry that's really strong. You've got that option. These are all good candidates because they have good AP ratios, and they're either really fast so they can avoid damage in the case of Rakan, so you can afford to be a little bit squishier, or they have a bunch of just innate tankiness, like Gragas, like Sejuani, where you can get away with running Ardent Censer and still be tanky enough not to get blown up instantly in a fight. So I think that these are all very good candidates for Ardent tanks. And like an Ardent build would look something like Talisman, Zeke's, Knight's Vow, Ardent Censer. You could even go Zeke's directly into Ardent Censer if you don't want to go Knight's Vow, if your team is really, really far ahead and you're not afraid of getting blown up, that's a possibility. But just remember that Ardent is going to make you super squishy most of the time. So you're getting that specifically to try to buff up your AD carry or any other assassin. Now, Ardent Sensor can also be really good with these lethality users, right? To some extent. So if you have a Talon or a Zed on your team, giving them a little bit extra attack speed can be nice. Or Master Yi, or something like that. So I think that these are probably the best tanks right now. Then you've also got kind of your standard just HP tanks that can't really use Ardent Sensor. They can still get Zeke, Knight's Vow, Locket. That can be strong. So that's going to be your Nautilus, your Braum, your Leona. I think that they can be okay on this patch. I just think that these the tanks that have the option of going Ardent Sensor have a little bit of an edge. So yeah, I mean, you can do the cute interaction between Locket and Gargoyle Stoneplate. I've seen people mention that before. It's okay. You get a big shield that decays really quickly, and you have no CDR on that build, which is a huge knock, and you have no HP on that build. It's just armor and magic resist, pretty much, with the shield on Locket. And I don't really think that's where you want to be. I think you need CDR to help peel a little bit better so that you get the cooldown reduction on your abilities. And I think you need HP just for good stat balancing to go along with your armor and your magic resist. So Gargoyle is also a bit more expensive than other AP items, or other utility items, which doesn't seem like a big deal. It's like, oh, who cares? It's just an extra, 300 or 400 gold. But that's a lot, an extra 300 gold. Is about another 15% or so cost over some of the other items like Ardent Sensor or Knight's Vow, Redemption, that type of stuff. So it's definitely relevant that it's a bit more expensive. It doesn't have CDR on it. And it doesn't give any utility straight up by itself, right? Like, it makes you a lot tankier, but doesn't do anything for your team unless you combine it with Locket. So it's okay. I know I've seen some YouTubers hyping up, oh my god, overpowered, you can create shields for 1,000. But it takes a lot of setup to do that, especially because you're not getting any bonus HP off of these items. So that means that your Locket shields are going to be relatively low because you don't have any bonus HP. So it's cute, but I just think it's too gimmicky. I think you're just better off going a 4-ward item, Knight's Vow, Locket most of the time, or ZZ, or not ZZ Rot, Zeke's. Okay, so non-Ardent AP supports are weaker, so they don't have a lot of new toys again in this patch. However, if people figure out this Duskblade Misfortune thing really early, or Duskblade Gen really early, then that might allow a space for Zyra to come back into the meta, or Brand, or other things like that. And I know people would really like that, because the reason that Zyra rotated out primarily is people stopped playing burst damage AP or AD champions in the laning phase. So they stopped playing Jen as much. They stopped playing Misfortune, Varus. All these champions were obscenely powerful very, very early on in patches 7.1 to 7.5 because of lethality. And they nerfed it so much that people went away from that. But if they go back towards that with Misfortune, your Zyra, if you root them and then just do that Misfortune combo that I talked about, they're dead. So we might be able to see Zyra come back into the meta, but we'll see. I'll keep an eye on that. Okay, I think that the Energizer build is still going to define the AD carry role for the most part, except for the Duskblade users that I mentioned before. I think that you can incorporate the Duskblade potentially into Energizer builds. You just go Duskblade, Infinity, Rapid Fire, Static. I'm not sure if that would be worth it, but we'll see. We'll see. I think that maybe that could be a gen thing, like Duskblade, Infinity, Rapid Fire, Shiv. I don't think you'd do that on Trist. I don't know. Probably not Caitlyn. Maybe. I mean, Caitlyn could proc it so easily because of her huge range. Just walk into a bush, walk out, auto attack them. Walk into a bush, walk out, auto attack them, and just rinse and repeat. And Duskblade, the lethality is very good on her headshots. I don't know. We'll see how it shapes up. We'll see how it shapes up. But I think that people are still primarily going to be going crit stuff with a Duskblade sprinkled in. Maybe, if people figure out about it. Okay, AP Assassins, I think they're still going to be really good middle. I think it's very important to have an AP Assassin middle so you're not overloaded on AD, so Rammus doesn't completely destroy you. So, you know, I'll go down into what some of the best ones are here in a second when I talk about the top 5 of each role. It's the usual suspects, just Cass, LeBlanc, Echo, Katarina, Syndra. So I think they'll still be really good. Duskblade plus Cleaver is a lot stronger. So like Pantheon, Jarvan, Wukong, I think is going to be like just really strong. I mean, Pantheon is going to be an absolute living nightmare with these lethality changes on the Duskblade, especially early on. It's just gross. He's already really oppressive top lane. Now he's going to be much, much worse. So yeah, and then Jarvan potentially using that Duskblade be a lot worse, and then Wukong is already pretty good too. So we'll see how it goes down. I think those champions are going to be a lot stronger though. And then finally, I think tanks might start coming back into the fold, Rammus in particular. You can also see Gragas, Shen, Sejuani, and Zac. You know, and I think a standard build might look something like Thornmail, Deadman, Knight's Vow, Zeke's against heavy AD comps. And it's really difficult to imagine how your team doesn't win with that. Like, you have so much extra utility with these items. You're not sacrificing much tankiness to get them. And then you got your Thornmail and your Deadmans for even more utility. You got your move speed. You got your Cold Steel and your Grievous Wounds. You've got your protection, protect your carries here. You've got your boost up your carry damage. I just think that's just going to crush a lot of people if people go for that build. Okay, so the top 5 for each role. Top lane is the hardest one to predict. I think Pantheon is a very, very clear winner up there. Kled has been rising quite a lot. I think he'll continue. It's going to be tough to see because he's not going to be using the new lethality that much, I don't think. But the fact that Fiora is leaving, I think, is good news for him. Probably. I don't know. Like, he's pretty... I think he scales better than a lot of tanks. Top lane is so hard to predict because, like I said, there's just a confluence of you've got all these lethality users, you've got all these tanks. It's hard to know like who's going to be on top, and you've got your traditional fighters that are going to go Trinity Force, or you've got your double lifesteal fighters top lane. It's really, really difficult to predict who's going to come out on top lane. I think this is going to be the wild, wild west top lane. I think there's going to be a lot of different options that can potentially be effective. But I'm saying Pantheon, Kled, Jarvan, Wukong, and Camille for solo queue. Now Shin, Gragas, you know, they could sneak in and be very relevant up there, but I think that these 3 lethality users, Kled, just because everything else has been kind of nerfed out except for him lately. And I think Camille can start to make a little bit of a comeback in a space where you need a hyper carry, potentially against tanks, who has some play against these assassins with their shield, or against these lethality users with their shield, who can shred tanks later. We'll see. Mid lane, basically the same thing. Kaz, I put Echo in there instead of Malzahar. I just think Echo is just obnoxiously powerful with a good player. He's just so hard to kill. He's so resilient. He's so fast. He does huge burst damage. He has great wave clear. He counters a lot of other assassins, like Syndra in particular. He's just really, really strong. Kassadin, I still think, can completely take over a game if left unchecked. LeBlanc, really good if the person's really good with LeBlanc. Katarina, Syndra. Jungle, I think Rammus, honestly, is going to be the best jungler right now. I'm calling it right now. I think he's going to be out of control because everyone's going to be playing lethality. The direct buff to him is huge, and the Thornmail buff to him is huge. That's a triple buff. It's a meta buff. It's a literal buff to him, and it's a buff to a major item that he buys. So I honestly think he's better than Zac. I think he's more reliable. Like, Zac can miss all kinds of stuff. I've seen so many people pick Zac because he's left open. They have no experience on him, and it just completely sucks. And they get ruined. Like, they just don't use his ultimate properly. They can't hit his engages. They just don't chain together his Q punches fast enough. Rammus, Powerball, you roll up, you run into somebody, you press E, you just roll your hand across the keyboard, and they're going to die or they're going to be CC'd for a really long time. Rinse and repeat every 5 seconds. Like, I think that, well, not with the ult, but with the Powerball. I just think he's super, super strong right now. Nunu, I still think is really powerful. He still the king of counter jungling. He's going to be great to buff up your Dravens, your Caitlyns, your Twitches with his Blood Boil. He's going to lose some stock if Misfortune and Jin come online, like I think they will. Blood Boil won't be as useful, but overall, I think he's still really powerful to juggle. Master Yi, arguably, could be #1. He's the best booster champion. He's just completely out of control if he takes over a game. I don't think the lethality changes are going to matter at all for him. He still is probably going to build Blade the Ruined King and the on-hit build and just crush people. You can go crit if you want. You can build him so many different ways. He clears really quickly. He has great objective control. He can split push. He can 1v1. He can team fight. He can do everything. He just requires a little bit of gold and time. So he can be completely worthless if the enemy team has a lot of CC. But we'll see. We'll see. I think that he's always a major threat when he's in a game. And then Cho'gath is kind of my sleeper pick here. You know, this might be a little high for him, but I want to be optimistic and think that he's going to be relevant in the jungle. He's going to have great wave clear with his spikes and all of his abilities. He should be very healthy when he comes out because he has the innate sustain. He should have pretty good scaling. He's going to be good against lethality users because he's going to stack so much armor and health that it's not going to matter. So, you know, I think you could just go like, I don't know what you would build on him. I guess obviously Cinder Hulk plus, I honestly don't know. Like maybe Titanic Hydra just to give you some extra on-hit damage. And then I don't really know after that. I mean, I guess you could maybe go something like Righteous Glory and try to just get close to him and chomp him. I'm not really sure, but I think that he could definitely be relevant. All right, and then AD, I still think Draven will probably be top. He's just so oppressive, especially if he gets ahead early. I don't think he's going to utilize the new Duskblade, although I guess he could. I mean, nothing stops him from going Duskblade into Death's Dance. That could be pretty good on him. I think Misfortune is definitely going to be very, very high up the priority list once people figure out her interactions with Duskblade is just disgusting. Duskblade into Black Cleaver is so ridiculous on her. Twitch, always a powerhouse. I think he might get muscled out if Misfortune and Jin become more popular, especially if Draven's still popular. He can get beaten up really hard early game. So that, in theory, if that happens, that could squeeze him out of the top 5. But he's so dangerous, and he's so good with Critical Strike with his ultimate that I think he still deserves the #3 spot. I think Caitlyn is still going to be extremely good. As I explained, they're not touching her headshot mechanic. They're lowering her attack speed late game. That sucks, but at the same time, she still has a ton of extra power. She could even go with the Duskblade that I talked about before because she has such long range to proc it over and over again. And then Jin, I think Jin Duskblade is something that is definitely going to be worth exploring. I think it'll make quite a splash. Jin Duskblade, like Infinity Edge, I think will be pretty beast. Okay, let's talk about the tier list here now that we've hit 2 hours. Talk about everything else. There are some changes. I'm going to spend most of the time on some of the changes that I have here, and then we'll see if we can do this in about 30 minutes. Because a lot of it is similar to last week, but we do have some newcomers up here. So Janna, I think, is going to retain her top spot. She still is really good. Watch my Janna guide. Oh, by the way, I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but if you click on this, you can see a mini guide for each one of the champions. I think I mentioned it earlier. So you can see who the person's good with, who they're good against, who they're bad with, who they're bad against, recommended items. I'll change that to mobility boots. Recommended items, runes, masteries, and then if I have an in-depth guide for the champion, then I'll list it here as well. So anything that you could ever want to know about the champion on one page, it's right there. I have people ask me all the time, what are the runes that you pick for this champion? Which items do you recommend? When would you pick this champion? Who's this champion bad against? It's right here, all in one quick guide for you. And I have that for the top 20 or 30 champions. So ton of time invested there. Move that down. Okay, so Janna's still the top of the roost. She's already historically really good. She's just great at the Clown Fiesta. She can pull people out of situations and save them from just really dumb things that no other champion can save them from. She has excellent scaling with her shield and with her ultimate with plus healing. She has excellent scaling with her AD carry because she gives them flat AD. which also benefits from crit and lethality. So monster scaling, the coin changes help her out a lot. It just basically gives her a double passive, which perfectly fits her kit. The fact that Thornmail now applies grievous wounds is excellent for her because it doesn't really affect her. Like, it's going to affect her ultimate healing, but it's not going to affect her shield, and it's going to hurt a lot of her other competitors a lot more, mostly Soraka. So Soraka is actually a pretty good pick into Janna, historically, because Janna can't threaten her early, and Soraka, if you don't get to her, can take over a game with her healing, and she will, unless the enemy gets a lot of grievous wounds. But now that the tanks are probably going to have Thornmail, a lot of them are going to buy Thornmail, then that's going to hurt Soraka big time. And when Soraka's hurt, that means Janna gains. So she was already the top. I think she's still going to be the top for those reasons. Sona, I moved her up one slot here. I've been playing her a lot more lately. I think she is a powerhouse, and I've been saying this for several patches. She's really, really strong. Now, she is a lot less safe than Janna, so when people are trying out their Zeds, when they're playing Kayn, Zed, Talon, all of these lethality people maybe coming back into the fold, maybe Kha'Zix, maybe Rengar, Sona's not going to do very well in that environment, so that's a risk. However, she's excellent against tanks. She has excellent sustain in lane. She's going to be good against these poke lanes like Misfortune. She can at least heal through some of those Qs in lane. She's excellent with Misfortune historically, because you know what's really good for a Misfortune ultimate? Holding them in place for a second and a half. So she's going to have excellent poke to complement Misfortune. And just historically, Sona and Misfortune have been like peanut butter and jelly. When Misfortune's good, Sona's almost always good to go with it, because you can hold them in place for the for a lot of the Misfortune channel. So that's basically a one team fight right there. If Sona just flash ults, hits 4 people, and Misfortune ults on top of that, that's it. Fight's done most of the time. So very, very powerful combination. So Sona's not good against the lethality assassins, but she is very good with Misfortune, who I think is going to rise. And she's just good in general. Excellent scaling with all the items, the plus healing, shielding. Excellent interactions with Athene's Unholy Grail. That item was built just about for her specifically. It's so powerful on her that I think she'll still be really strong. Now, Rakan is someone that I moved up a lot last patch, and he's still retaining most of his spot here. I moved him down a little bit. Coin is still very good on him. Hard Engage is still something that a lot of teams need. He's probably the best Hard Engage champion, because he can get out, because he has an escape. You go in, you ult W in there, charm everyone that you need to charm, and then just jump back out with your shield. So unlike most hard engage tanks, he doesn't have to stick around and get hit by everything. He can hard engage and then just get the flip out of there, right? Before everyone hits him, if you're playing him correctly. So especially with Xayah, because he gets a massive jump range with that. So I think that makes him powerful. He can run Ardent Censer. He can run Knight's Vow. He can run... Now, Knight's Vow obviously has a diminished effect on him, but it's still really good. He can run Zeke's, because he holds people in place with his ultimate. Has a really low cooldown on his ultimate. So I think all of this, and he benefits from the shielding a lot on Ardent Censer. That's something that a lot of other Ardent tanks don't benefit from as much. They don't benefit personally from the plus healing and shielding, right? So like your Gragas and your Sejuanis, who can also build Ardent Censer, don't really benefit from the plus healing. He does. His passive benefits from it, and his shield, and his Q. So he has 3 different things that benefit from plus healing. So I think all of that combines to make him the premier engaged champion. He's difficult to play, so if you want to play him, be sure to practice him a lot at normals first. But he's very, very powerful and very rewarding. By the way, he would also be great with Misfortune, because you charm everyone, CC, pull them all together, Misfortune ults, boom, that's death. So anyone that can crowd control and hold people in place for Misfortune, that's going to be a premier champion on this patch, probably. Blitzcrank, fantastic champion. I am personally not that great with him. I need to practice more with my hooks, but he's very, very one-dimensional is another reason that I don't like him as much. Is it's like you either hit the hooks or you don't. That's it. His whole thing is just engage. That's it. He doesn't peel that well. He's okay, I guess, but these 3 champions can play a lot better in more diverse game states, right? So they can play better from behind than Blitzcrank can, I think. I mean, Blitzcrank, you know, you always have a chance, though, with Blitz. You just land that one golden hook, and it can just turn an entire game around. So, you know, he's always a threat. He always has a lot of power. He is very good against other enchanters. So, I'm respecting him. I'm putting him at the very top of the list, or in the very top class here, top tier. but I do think that you need to practice him, and you need to be able to hit those hooks first. He's very feast or famine. There's not an okay Blitzcrank. He's either a great Blitzcrank or just complete garbage Blitzcrank. So you want to be the former and not the latter. Okay, Thresh. I did move Thresh up a little bit here. It's kind of the same thing with Blitzcrank for me. You need to be able to hit your hooks a lot. I do not play him a lot. I'm not great with Thresh, but Thresh is undeniably an extremely powerful champion. He's probably the most versatile champion in the game. You can save people with Lantern. You can be aggressive with Lantern and pull people to you. You can flay people offensively to knock their movement away, like Zach's trying to jump on you or like Jarvan's trying to combo you. You can flay them away. You can flay people towards you to make landing hooks easier. You can use your hook, obviously, to hit champions. You can use it to jump around in the jungle if you're trying to escape something. You can use it to peel. So just everything is very... he just has a huge diversity of different tactics he can do in fights. His ultimate slows people, does decent damage. He has a soul collection mechanism, which is fun, and also gives him good scaling. He synergizes pretty well with Zeke's. His ult is a little bit on a longer cooldown than a lot of other ultimates, but you at least hold him in place. He's not that great with Knight's Vow. He's alright. He can't use Ardent Sensor, but he's really, really good. That's just all there is to it. I don't have him in the top of the list. If you're very good with him, I think he could even be the best support on this patch, period. But it requires a lot of skill and a lot of cooperation from your team to make that happen. So, he can be good. He's just a little bit less reliable than some of these other champions, I think. Nami, I moved her up quite a bit. She's very good with... this freaking cat here. Lady makes my nose itch. She's pretty good against Jhin and now Miss Fortune, who's going to be a lot more popular, I think, because she can knock them out of their ult. She's good with them as well, because you can, if you land that bubble in lane, she does have kill threat early on in lane. That's something that Sona doesn't have, and that's something that Janna doesn't have, is they don't have kill threat in lane typically. She does, though. And, you know, if you put your E on yourself and then you hit somebody to slow them down, it makes it almost certain, if they don't have a dash, that you're going to hit the bubble. And that gives you a lot of kill threat. She can also trade very well. So it's really hard to go toe-to-toe to her with if she just walks up, auto, wave, auto, walks away. She'll just wear you down in the lane, especially if people are running less door and shields now. I think people are starting to move away from that as much as they're doing that less than they have in the past. Her itemization is okay. I mean, she only has one healing spell, but it can bounce to multiple targets. So, you know, Ardent Sensor... Redemption, all that stuff is still pretty good on her, although it doesn't scale as well as it does on Sona and Janna. But, I mean, Sona only has one heal as well, but it's on like a 3-second cooldown, whereas Nami's is on a 10-second cooldown. But yeah, she just has a lot of utility. The bubble's useful, the wave is useful. All of that can hold people in place for a Miss Fortune ult. It can hold people, or at least slow them down so that Jhin can hit them more. I think that's pretty powerful. It's very good with Vayne. Vayne has become more popular lately. I don't know why, but people have played her a lot, and it's very good at helping Vayne kite around and just really control the situation because of that slow. Helps her run people down. So, I think she's pretty strong. That's why I've moved her up quite a bit. Now, Sejuani is a newcomer here. I did play her. I've played her probably 4 or 5 times in normals, and I've got to say, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, let me go look at her really quick. She was played in the... LCS very briefly. She was played in the LCS briefly. And at first I thought it was kind of wonky because I was like, you know, I'm not really sure if this is something that I want because her mana costs are so high early on. And I was really concerned about that. So it's 70 for this. It's 80 for this. You know, her mana costs are just super high. And I'm just like, how does she not get poked out of lane and just killed? Well... After playing her some more, she has really nice engage. So if your jungler shows up, you just Arctic Assault. It can run through minions, which is huge. Because Gragas can't belly slam through minions. I like to compare her to Gragas somewhat, who I think is also a pretty good pick in lane. But as sort of an engage tank. So she can go through minions, which is huge. So a lot of times people think they're safe when they're sitting behind minions from engages, right? Because they're used to playing against Blitzcrank, Thresh, whatever. Doesn't save you from her. She runs through the minions, hits you, stuns you, and then once she gets on you, it's very difficult to get away because she's going to Winter's Wrath to slow people down, and this applies procs. So you've got this ice system here with your E. Once you get 4 procs on somebody, kind of like Braum, you have to press the button to stun them, but it's a very long duration stun, and it does a lot of damage. So you just Arctic Assault, hit somebody with that, Winter's Wrath, auto attack them, then you could permafrost them, break the ice, and it's a lot of damage. So the Icebreaker is somewhere between 10 to 20% of their maximum health as bonus damage. In addition to, you know, stunning them for whatever duration, at least a second, and dealing this damage. So she's got some pretty decent burst damage game to her. And so if a Rammus rolls up or something and you just Arctic Assault right through the minions and hit them, it's very easy to follow up. She also can trade very well every, 15 seconds or so, and then she gets 1 or 2 seconds worth of invulnerability, basically. She just gets so much extra resists that you just cannot fight her early on. And so, like, in an all-in situation. So I think that makes her pretty good. This is decent wave clear. It's not great. It's okay. So, yeah. I mean, I like her. And then her ultimate also, really low, well, not really low, but pretty low cooldown, 120 seconds. Nice range to it. And it can freeze and stun a ton of different people. And when they're frozen and you hit them with stuff, then you deal a bunch of extra damage with Icebreaker as well. So you stun everybody with that. You roll up with your Arctic Blast, do your Winter's Wrath, hit them all with Winter's Wrath. It'll break the ice. This does a ton of damage. It's great initiation. It's pretty reliable initiation. It's fast. It can hit multiple targets. And if they sit in it, it does massive damage and slows them by 80% for 3 seconds. So it's excellent, excellent follow-up. And you know what this would be great with? That's right, a Misfortune ult. So if you hit them with Glacial Prison and then Misfortune ults, they're probably going to die. And if they don't, they're definitely blowing a lot of flashes to get out of it. So I think that she's going to combo very, very well with Misfortune. Another thing is she's safe when you're like roaming around a lot of times. You can just like run through a wall if someone's chasing you or whatever. She's really hard to catch. She's pretty fast in general too. 340 base move speed is relatively high for a lot of supports. And you can slow people down while you're running away with your Winter's Wrath and all that stuff. So she's very durable, very tanky, has excellent engage, 2 different forms of engage. She can run Ardent Sensor if you want to. She does have AP ratios, 80% on her ult. It's not great AP ratios. It's okay. I wouldn't typically recommend going Ardent Sensor on her, but it is a possibility if you run Stoneborn Pact instead of Courage of the Colossus, which it's a pretty big trade-off. It's a pretty big trade-off, but it is on the table. But even if you don't do that, you can still go, you know, the standard Zeke's into Knight's Vow if you want to. You can go Talisman on her if you're not going to face a lot of poke in lane. However, she has no innate sustain, kind of like Gragas has Happy Hour, so you can heal himself in lane. She doesn't have that, so you almost, I think often you'll have to go Relic Shield, which is fine on her to give her that extra bit of tankiness. The extra health also scales very well with the bonus magic resistant armor that she gets. So I think that I think she's quite powerful. She's probably my favorite engaged tank right now. It's close. Like, I like Rakan. Rakan's probably my major homeboy for this, but if you need someone who can get in there, has a bit more persistent crowd control than Rakan, and can just soak a lot of damage, then I think that she's probably your premier meat shield to throw in there. Now, Fiddlesticks is another one that I've been talking about for a while. I think he's really good in the right circumstances, and that is against assassins. He's taken the spot of Lulu in my mind. He does a little bit more damage than Lulu. His crowd control is a bit more reliable. Polymorph, they can still run around. Fear, they're basically just stuck in place for the duration. He has better wave clear than she does with her crows. He has more crowd control because he has the fear plus his silence, which is very annoying in a team fight. And he has just the surprise I win card, the trump card, if he, not to be political there, but like in the non-political sense of that word, He has the ace up his sleeve where he can just jump over a wall with his ultimate and just like win a team fight if they don't have good vision control. So I think Fiddlesticks is still excellent in those situations. I mean, obviously, like Fear into Misfortune ult or Fiddlesticks into Misfortune ult is going to clean out fights really quickly too. So I think he's really good. He can have problem against pokers, so against someone like, and against hard engage. So he's best against like squishies, or he's okay against tanks, I guess, but you know, you're primarily picking him for the Fear. He has excellent roaming, so once you get Moby Boots, you know, if they have a susceptible mid lane, so let's say they have, I don't know, a Diana mid lane who has no escapes, and you just come rolling up with mobility boots and cast your Fear, she's probably dead. So if they have a very susceptible mid lane, you can pick Fiddle, push your way bottom lane, and then run up to mid lane. So there are options with him. You could even go Talisman. I mean, Talisman would be pretty solid because that'll let you run up and fear people. And you could go Ardent Censer on him as well, because your Fear counts as a crowd control, and anyone who hits the feared person is going to get the Ardent Censer buff. If you run Bond of Stone, or not Bond, whatever, Stoneborn Pact, which is okay because he doesn't have a good mastery. Like, some people go Storm Raider Surge. You know, some people go like Thunderlords, which is pretty awful on him. Like, there just isn't a good mastery for him. So you're not really giving up a lot to go Stoneborn, and it does let you run Ardent Censer. So I think that is an option. I think that can be powerful. Morgana is another one who has been popular for a while. Like, people play him sometimes in pro play. Everyone's always asking me about Morgana. Historically, I haven't liked her that much. But I do kind of like her in this meta for a few different reasons. She's growing on me. She's growing on me. I do like her. I mean, I think she's cool. I like her lore. I like her sultry nature. But historically, I have liked Tahm Kench instead of her as the premier get people out of jail free card, right? But the thing is, right now, a lot of comps need engage. Tahm Kench does not have engage. He's strictly a peeler tank. And she does have engage if you hit her bind. Now, it is hard to hit the bind, but it gets to be a pretty low cooldown once you get enough cooldown reduction. And if you just throw enough of them, you're eventually going to hit them. The other thing is her shield provides a very valuable service against hard crowd control. So if you put this on a hyper carry, like Twitch just shows up with a Morgana shield on him, it's really hard to deal with that because people can't crowd control him anymore. So it's an excellent counter to things like Blitzcrank, like Thresh, who are both abundantly popular right now. Ashe, who's fallen off, is less so, but she's very, very good against the hook champions or other champions that are very reliant on their crowd control to be useful. And the shield also procs Ardent Censer. So even though it's a different kind of shield, it does still proc Ardent Censer. So that can be powerful. Her ultimate is really close range, but you can use it to peel still, and that's useful. So, you know, her W's kind of whatever. It's pretty awful. I mean, you can push lanes sort of kind of with it, but, you know, her Q and her E are powerful enough, I think, to make her in contention. Once again, primarily because a lot of teams lack engage. People are playing squishy assassins, and she has that engage. And she's good with those assassins because it's easy to kill somebody when they're crowd controlled for 3 seconds with a Morgana bind. So I would definitely feel comfortable picking her into Blitz or Thresh right now, for sure, and probably some other matchups as well. Braum is another one in a similar vein who is pretty good against the hook champions, and specifically, I think his stock's going to rise on this patch because he's excellent against a Misfortune ult. You just jump in front, block everybody, block for everybody. Historically, he's great against Misfortune, he's great against Twitch, and I think both of those are really strong on this patch. And I mean, he's pretty good overall just against ranged champions. You can just jump in front and block everything. So he's pretty good against you know, like Lux to a lesser extent. Just anything that's not melee that's trying to get on your people. That's another thing about Sejuani that I failed to mention. If you have a lot of melee on your team, which you probably will on this patch because there's going to be a lot of people running Lethality, if you have melee on your team, they apply procs of Frost. That means that you get to stun even more people with this. So Braum, when he hits Braum has to hit somebody with either his Q or his auto attack, and it starts the procs, and anybody, including ranged champions, can hit the person to get the stun. She doesn't have to touch them around melee. Your other people can go ahead and start getting those procs, even if you don't auto attack them, or even if you don't Q them, which is very helpful if you have a lot of melee. And I think you will have a lot of melee on this patch because of the lethality, like I mentioned before. So I think that's also going to increase her stock a little bit. Okay. So yeah, I think Braum will be good specifically as a counter to Misfortune and to Twitch. His problem, and why I put Sejuani higher than him, his problem is his engage is pretty shoddy. Like, it's a pretty slow-moving ultimate that's kind of easy to dodge and doesn't have as much range as Sejuani's. I'm pretty sure it's on a much longer cooldown. He doesn't do nearly the same kind of damage, but she has better peel and mitigation than he does. So Sejuani's just a more aggressive version of Braum to an extent. You know, I think they're different enough where they have different identities, but they're both kind of like crowd control tanks. She's just the more offensive one, and he's the more defensive one. Okay, so these are the top 10 champions. And now we're moving down into the next 10. So I have split up the list now to where you have the first 10 are always going to be on the first 2 tiers, just to help with clarity. So it's not some random number like 12 in the top little bit. And then the next 10 will always be tier 3. So this is top 10, and then top 20, and then everyone else is just kind of here. This is still like the sort of viable, but can have problems. And then this is the, like, you can try it, but do it at your own risk. Play that in fun with normals with your friends, not in ranked. Probably, unless you're just really, really good. Anyways, Gragas, he's kind of fallen out of my top 10. He still is good. I like him as support. I think Sejuani has supplanted him in that role. I just think that she fulfills the engage, lock him up role better. Her ultimate is just a lot more reliable than his. His, if you time it wrong, or if they just like dash and get out of the way, or they flash, you can actually blow people to safety. It splits people up. So even if you do hit your core target, you might split a bunch of enemies up, and that's really bad if you split people up when you have a Misfortune on your team who's trying to ult, or a Cannon who's trying to ult, or just other people where you want your team grouped up. So it can still be really powerful. I do like Gragas. He's a good Ardent Sensor user. He's a pretty good tank. The fact that his engage, his E, is either predicated on you flashing to get to your core target, or like walking through minions, is definitely a hit to him. Because you can't really belly slam onto people easily in lane to engage, with especially the ganks coming, because you're going to hit the minions a lot of the time. Whereas Sejuani, as I explained before, she can run through the minions and still hit people, which is a really, really big deal in the laning phase. So it's just a lot harder to get successful engages with Gragas than it is for Sejuani. And I just feel like all of her abilities just all together are just a little bit more valuable than his. He is very, very tanky with his happy hour. So over a long fight, he's probably going to be tankier, but for that just initial burst fight, Sejuani is going to be tankier with her passive. So I favor her a little bit more right now as the premier pure engage tank. The hard engage tank. Okay, Tahm Kench has fallen a little bit too. I do still like Tahm, but he's just primarily a peeler champ, and I've kind of replaced him with Morgana. She just scales a lot better with Ardent Sensor primarily. She can still use Zeke's and be fine. She does like to be tanky going into fight. She does have a low casting cost ultimate, or a low cooldown ultimate, and it does hold people in place. So she's actually pretty good with both Zeke's and Ardent Sensor. And Tahm Kench, he's okay. I mean, I really love him. He's one of my favorite champions of all time. He was my most played champion last season. It just feels like this isn't a great meta for him. I just feel like other options have arisen that help him out more. Because you don't want to eat Misfortune while she's ulting. You don't want to eat Jhin while he's ulting. You don't want to eat Twitch while he's ulting. And so some of the champions that historically he's been good at saving and protecting just aren't getting played right now. Some of the hyper carries that he's played in the past, like he's okay with Draven, but Draven wants somebody who can be more aggressive and get kills. I don't know. And that's a big thing too, is like Morgana, when she protects somebody with Black Shield, they can still carry on with their ult or whatever they want to do. Whereas Tahm Kench, when you eat somebody, it stops them from doing what they want to do. So I do like the Kench. I just feel like he needs to be on more coordinated teams right now where you can really leverage his ultimate to get really successful jungle ganks. So, you know, I do think that he can have power, but I feel like they're just better choices. Soraka has fallen quite a lot, and a lot of that is just Thornmail. I just feel like the new Thornmail is going to really, really cramp her style. it's going to make it so hard because your AD carry is almost always going to have to hit the tank when they get in his face or her face. And that's going to apply the grievous wounds. So I think it's going to be really hard to beat Soraka right now. Already at higher elos, people get Executioner's Calling, and that just completely ruins her. And now they have Thornmail, and Merlinomicon is also a very popular item in the mid lane that people get anyways, regardless of whether there's a Soraka in the game. And so people aren't having to go very far out of their way at all. Thornmail, another item, very good even if Soraka's not there in the game because it does so much other stuff. So there are so many items right now that are just like, oops, they accidentally like completely invalidate Soraka. You know, that it makes it really hard to play Soraka. So some of the other champions like that have healing, like Nami and like Sona, have a lot more utility in their kit. They have more crowd control. They have like shields or other forms of disruption in their kit. Whereas Soraka is almost strictly a heal bot. Like her silence is okay, but they can walk out of it. I just feel like she's almost strictly a heal bot. And that's just not a place you want to be on this patch with the new Thornmail. Lulu has fallen quite a bit in my eyes. I think that the hit to her early game is just massive. It really has become a big deal. So, you know, she lost 60 HP, I think, early on. Maybe not that much, but like 50 HP, like 10% of her health early on. And they dropped her shield value by a third, which was an eighth, which is like 13%, 12.5% of her shield value. I just don't see it, and I think that Sona just beats the daylights out of her in lane because you have just as much harass, but you have a heal when you're Sona. So I just think Sona crushes her. Janna outscales her for the most part. Rakan can just I don't know. Like her polymorph is still very strong and it's very good in team fights. I just feel like there are better choices out there. I think Fiddlesticks is probably a better anti-assassin, or Janna. Or even Morgana if it's an AP assassin. I just feel like she's really strong, but she has more problems now. And Kayn is very strong too, and she's okay with Kayn, but she's not nearly as good as other users. She wants early game aggression. She really has to leverage like Thunderlords, Spell Thieves items, and those items have both been indirectly nerfed. So Wind Speakers is so strong right now. And it's such a long video. I'm sorry. I'm running out of juice. I'm running out of brain power. We got to finish though. But I mean, the bottom line is she's still pretty good against assassins. I just think she gets outclassed by a lot of other supports you're going to be facing, and she gets blown up really easily by Blitz and Thresh. So we'll see. Cho'gath is someone that I boosted up a lot. I talked about this a lot earlier. I don't have him up too much, but I think he's going to be like in viable territory maybe as support. If you hit your Qs a lot, he can do a lot of burst damage. He does have quite a lot of CC and just burst damage in fights. His Vorpal Spikes help him apply Ardent Sensor. If you want to go that route, it's possible. Because before he really had to hit his Q to apply Ardent Sensor because his W and his ult don't do it. But now he has a much more reliable way to put those Stoneborn Pact debuffs on people to proc the Ardent Sensor, so I think he'll be alright. Hi. You gotta wait if she's gonna scream, you're gonna have to wait, because I'm almost done with this. But just like 5 minutes. I mean, you can take the swing if you want it. Otherwise, 5 minutes. Alistar is another one. I think he can be strong. I talked about him earlier. The problem is you have to use 2 of his very long cooldown crowd control abilities to engage. I just think Rakan does it better. Alistar is still pretty good, but I think I would rather have Rakan, Sejuani, or Gragas as like premier engaged champions. Bard is probably going to be one of the more debatable choices on this list. Like, he could be as high. I mean, you could even put him in tier 1 if you want. Maybe tier 2. But, his problem is he doesn't have great itemization. He has no scaling on so many of his abilities. Like his ultimate has no scaling on it. His magical journey has no scaling on it. His W has very light AP scaling. So really, it's just all about his meeps. He's like a one. I don't know. I just feel like his scaling is very, very low. He's a very early game, aggressive, damage-oriented support. You can definitely dominate with that if you run Thunderlords, take a bunch of AP, and get ahead early. But I just feel like he's super risky. And if you don't hit his ult right in the mid-game, there's just so many ways to mess him up. If you mess up your tunnels when you're trying to escape, I don't know. He's a specialist champion. If you play him a lot and you're really good with him, if you're Afro Moo or whatever, yes, he can be really good. But for the general population that's probably watching this video, I think there are probably better choices. I love him. He's a lot of fun. I do try to play him whenever I can. I just feel like he's a lot less consistent than other options. However, you know, if you're really good with him, he could be as high as tier 2 or maybe even tier 1. He's just one of those types of champions. I just feel like in solo queue, that requires a lot more coordination. Or it does not have as much coordination as you would want when you're playing Bard. I think that he's just going to be a little bit weaker. All right, Nunu's here. I think Nunu can be really strong. He's kind of gimmicky, but if you have a really powerful auto attack champion and they just don't have a lot of dive, which they're going to have dive, they're going to be running lethality assassins probably, so that's why I've dropped him down a lot. But if your snowball attacks or lowers the attack speed of the enemy, you ult, trigger Zeke's, put Blood Boil on your AD carry. You have Zeke's, Blood Boil, plus Ardent Sensor potentially. That's a triple buff. Your AD carry is going to completely annihilate the enemy team if no one gets in there to stop it. So he's the best enhancer of AD carries out there. And he has good utility. He has good sustain in lane. The Snowball, pretty good slow for ganks. Pretty good attack speed modifier. But he doesn't have a lot of crowd control. If assassins can get to your AD carry, he's just going to sit there and look at him a lot of the time. So he's not great in an assassin meta, which is what we might be going back into. But he can be strong in the right circumstances. You know, if you're going to pair him with someone, you might pair him. If they don't have assassins, you could put him with like a Kog'Maw, a Jinx. Maybe even he'd be great with Vayne. Vayne can kind of protect herself by rolling away from stuff sometimes. So that might be an option in some situations. Karma is just pretty much falling off the face of the earth. Like, she can be really strong, but the nerf to her shield was massive. The introduction of Doran's shield helps mitigate a lot of her early game poke. Sona beats her up really badly in lane because she's got to heal and better harass. Nami beats her up really badly in lane. Blitz and Thresh can both hook her and kill her. She has no reliable crowd control. She's got her little root, but it's delayed. I don't know. I think she was an early game power play, and I think they've nerfed a lot of that over time with her. Well, I guess she's retained that, but she doesn't have the scaling of the team fight. So she used to be very powerful early and respectable scaling into team fights later, and I think she lost a lot of that scaling into team fights with her the change to her Montreux shield. So she's all right. And then Zyra, I've got down here. Once again, we'll see. I mean, if Jhin and Miss Fortune come online and they're a lot more powerful, you might see Zyra up a lot higher next patch. But right now, I think that AP supports are just in a really rough spot. She's the highest AP support, other than like Fiddlesticks, I guess, because he has very unique utility to him. It's just tough. I know there's a lot of Zyra fans out there on the channel, and I've tried to play her some on the this patch, and the previous couple of patches, and just haven't found a lot of success. I mean, obviously, she's very weak to Thresh and Blitz if they land hooks. You can outplay that with your plants if the Thresh and the Blitz aren't really that experienced. But you don't have the follow-up to kill people in lane like you used to. She's been directly nerfed several times. The Masteries got nerfed, that did a lot of damage. And, Sadie, what are you doing? And, you just don't have enough to finish people off. But with this new Duskblade, with lethality builds, if Jhin and Miss Fortune come back, then you just might see her return with a vengeance. So, we'll see. Okay, and what are we at? Are we at 4 hours yet? We're at 2:30. Okay, well, I'm going to end it there. Other notables, like Galio's okay, Nautilus, so, like, these are all, like, okay champions. I just feel like they're outclassed by other champions. Nautilus is an engaged tank. I just like Sejuani and Gragas a lot more. If you want hard engage, Alistar I like more also. So he's okay. It's just the hit a while ago to his wave clear with his E was a pretty big deal. It takes away a lot of his damage in team fights, and it takes away a lot of his wave clear early on. So I feel like they're probably just better choices. Leona's one that might surprise people being down this far. She can be really strong. She just doesn't have a reverse gear, and she's very one-dimensional. Like, you go in, you use your abilities, you do damage, that's it. Whereas I feel like Sejuani and Gragas and even Alistar bring a lot more utility to the team, a lot more reliability to the team. So she can be really strong. I just feel like she's good in bronze and silver because people won't counter gank you as much and they won't position correctly around her. But she just gets completely destroyed by a good Janna or a good Morgana or Tahm or Alistar. I don't know. She's okay. I like her. I think she's a lot of fun. I just feel like there typically are better options for her most of the time, especially at gold and higher. Galio, like I said, he can be good. He's primarily a peeler tank. I don't like peeler tanks. I like tanks that can engage a lot more. If I want to play a peeler, I'm probably just going to play Janna. Taric, we'll see. He might be stronger than I think he is with the heal right now. I know there's a ton of Taric fans on the channel, but I always try to just give you the truth. I don't lie to you. I don't try to blow smoke up your whatever. You know, I try to just hit you with the truth, what I think is going on. I'm not always right, but I try to be honest. I honestly still think he has a lot of problems. We'll see. And maybe like for a late game comp, I just feel like it's shifting more towards early game now. With the Duskblade, you want the earlier, more aggressive champions, with the exception of some particular powerhouse picks like Janna. You just want people that can follow up and do aggressive stuff. I mean, all of these champions fit that bill early on. They can get aggressive early and be effective in lane, with the exception of Janna because she's ridiculously powerful with the rest of the stuff that she does. But everyone else can be really aggressive and all in early on. It's at the top of the list. So I just feel like it's and that's gonna be good because of the rise of the Duskblade, I think. So I don't know. I don't see it. I mean, he could be good, but I just think they're better choices. Vel'Koz and Brand, pretty good AP damage. Have a terrible time against assassins. We're going to be seeing a lot of assassins with lethality. Fiddlesticks is a better choice because he's actually good against assassins and he does heavy AP damage. So there probably will be a need for AP on some teams when you have your 4 AD teams. But I think that Fiddlesticks and potentially even Zyra. Zyra's not great against assassins either, but she's much more reliable in lane. She's very good with Misfortune also. Because you can, you know, obviously you both have huge area of effect damage. It's pretty reliable. Okay. Zilia is kind of an odd duck. People have mentioned him a lot. Like, he can, if you get your slow and then double bomb people consistently, he can be powerful. I just feel like he doesn't quite do enough for most teams. Like, he doesn't have any heals or shields. He has an ult. I don't know. He's okay. He's okay. Trundle, decent at breaking tanks, but they just nerfed his pillar on this patch too, to where it no longer gives vision in bushes, which is kind of a big deal. So I think Trundle still has problems. Malachi, once again, he's a peeler tank. Don't like it. I think even if I wanted to play a peeler tank, I'd probably just rather play Galio, because at least Galio has a ton of CC and pretty good scaling, or Nautilus. Nautilus is an engaged tank to some extent. I don't know. I just feel like he's low. Teemo is cute. He's fun. He can be very powerful if he gets a lot of AP. If he gets his Leandries, Void Staff, Ludens, he can be really strong in the late game. Veigar has a nice stun. He's going to get carved up by assassins. Misfortune support. Very strong ADC. Not as strong as support, I don't think. I mean, Duskblade is just too expensive to be a support item. Black Cleaver is also very expensive as a support item. Probably better choices. Malzahar, he's been nerfed, gutted. His minions don't do anything. He just requires too much AP to get going for support anymore. He's okay mid lane, but bad as support. Lux needs a lot of AP, very little crowd control, gets carved up by assassins. Finally, Sion. You can engage with him. It's very, very easy to outplay that at higher elos. All of his stuff is telegraphed. He's okay. I think there are probably better choices. Malphite could potentially deserve to be higher, because at least he's an engaged tank, but he just really doesn't add as much utility as other engaged tanks, I think. So, and then we've got other stuff here too. Jarvan's an interesting one. I just don't think there's good itemization for him. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a long video. Hope you checked out the timestamps. I just want to be as thorough as possible. There is a ton of stuff changing, and it's really, really hard to predict the meta on this patch because Lethality is on the rise, and tanks will be on the rise with the new Thornmail. So hats off to Riot for really creating a very diverse and interesting game this patch. So anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.